Hello, how's it going? This is CRP speaking to you live on this Sunday, January 9th, 2022. Yeah, and I had a little accident last night, as a matter of fact. I broke off my fucking front tooth. So I am going to go to, let me see, this slide for now because I'm way embarrassed. I broke off my front right incisor. Well, frankly, I broke it off like about 12 years ago. It was an accident playing with the dog. It must have been 12 years ago, perhaps longer. I was playing with the dog one time and she was jumping up at me and trying to lick my face as she jumped up. And she was a medium-sized dog. She was a mutt. Her name was Claire. And she knocked my chin up against my teeth. And I had my mouth kind of like open. I was like in the middle of saying something to the dog. And my bottom tooth hit my top right incisor in like a perfect angle and broke off like half of it, right? And I was none too happy with it. I didn't yell at the dog. It wasn't the dog's fault. She was just playing. But I was none too happy about that, to break a fucking tooth like that. And so I went down to the dentist and they put like the ceramic cap on it. They didn't like grind it down and put like a porcelain cap. They just put like a ceramic cap on it, and it worked fine for a number of years, for like 5, 6 years. Then it broke off, and it must have been like 2015. I want to say 2015. I could be wrong. That I got, it broke off, and I got a new one, and that worked fine, no problem. Didn't even think about it until last night. And last night, I bit into a chicken leg, and my front tooth kind of like nicked the bone, and a piece of it just popped right off. And a piece of that ceramic crown that I have, and it was just, god damn it, not fun at all. And of course, it's a weekend, so I'm going to go to the dentist tomorrow. So I'm incredibly self-conscious about this shit. And so I'm not going to show my face. Sorry, guys. Because it's just, all kinds of, yeah, all kinds of just, eesh. But anyway, um, yeah. And the thing is, see, this topic of depression, let me dial it back. You remember a while ago, I did a broadcast called "A Theory of Morality." Mhm. And the thing is, see, since then, that was like way back in early 2020, I want to say. I mean, something like that. Let me just check real quick. It was way back when. And I, started thinking long and hard about the whole issue of, yeah, it was January 24th, 2021. And all of 2021, I've been thinking about these various theories I have, theories of everything, of the society we live in and whatnot. And along the way, I've been thinking about this whole depression issue and why so many people are depressed. And why are they depressed now? Why weren't they depressed before, in the past? Why is it that people are so down in the dumps and just depressing and depressive and all that today in our contemporary society, when we have it so good? It's almost as if, we have it so good that people are depressed about it, which is weird. But actually, when I get through my explanation, you'll realize that that's exactly the problem. And the reasons why are really interesting. Okay. And a lot of people say, well, our civilization is falling apart, blah, blah. Well, yes, it is. But if we look at it like the standard of living of most people today, we have never had it so good. This is just one of the best times in history of the human race. Yeah, we have problems, political chaos, this whole COVID nonsense and shots and all the rest of it. Yeah, but bottom line, we've never had it so good. We have so much food, we have so much shelter, availability of clean drinking water, a whole bunch of things that we in the past, I mean, we take them for granted today, but in the past, these were rarities. We have access to luxuries that are inconceivable to kings a mere century or two ago, let alone 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. Our species has been around. Homo sapiens sapiens has been around, conservative estimates say, the last 40,000 years. And yet, in the last 100 years, and especially the last 30 years, we have never had it so good. And that's precisely the problem, as I'll explain, and I think you'll agree with me. Before we get going, I have to do two things. Number one, as you can see there in the scroll, where is Tiffany Dover? All you guys, can you please in the chat write down where is Tiffany Dover? Because I never want us to forget poor Tiffany Dover. Where is Tiffany Dover? Please write it out in the chat. I'd appreciate it. I'll wait for chat to catch up. It's important for us to always remember of Tiffany Dover. And if you don't know who Tiffany Dover is, well, just Google her. Yeah, and you'll find out right away. Or if Google is acting hinky, go to DuckDuckGo. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Tenacity. Everybody, Jonathan. Thank you, Sammy T. Thank you. Where is Tiffany Dover? Come on, guys. You're right there in front of your keyboard. It's not that hard. Chrome surfing, data driven. Thank you both. Come on. I want to see as many where is Tiffany Dovers in the chat as possible. Chi-Town, James T, Data Driven. I always said thanks to Data Driven to you guys. Chi-Town, Jonathan Overbay, Z-Man. Oh no, Jonathan Overbay asked a question. Jonathan, where is Tiffany Dover? That's the question. Okay. Oh, you said, could you make some shirts with her on it? Oh, that's a good, or just make a shirt that just says, where is Tiffany Dover? That would be a great t-shirt. Actually, I'm going to make that. I'm going to make that, and I'm going to start, when I start producing public free videos again, I'll wear it. Yeah, I'll wear it. I'll get like a bunch made so that you all can see that, yeah. Where is Tiffany Dover? Anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to announce. The second thing I want to announce is, before we get cracking here, disclaimer. I just have to say this so that it's real fucking clear. I am not a mental health care professional. I am not providing mental health advice at all. This broadcast is an opinion broadcast, and it's meant as an alternative way to think about mental health. I want to make that really, really clear. And finally, if you are feeling suicidal or having suicidal ideations, please consult your local suicide prevention hotline. Thank you. But seriously, no, I'm not claiming to be a mental health professional. You guys know that. I've never ever claimed that. I'm giving an idea, a theory that I think actually works. Okay? And well, you'll be the judge. So let's get cracking. Okay, so the first thing we have to recognize is that depression affects millions of people in the industrialized society that we live in. I mean, that's no surprise. And current treatments are obviously not working. And we've got millions of people who are on a perpetual grind of pills and therapy, and they're getting absolutely nowhere. Okay, I mean, their depression is chronic. It's not an illness that they suffered and got over. They just manage it. They are managing their depression. Mhm. They're not overcoming it. Now, more money is spent each and every year to no avail, and suicides are increasing across the West every year. These are objective facts. And so, obviously, this is a problem, and it's so widespread. Yeah, everything is amazing and nobody is happy. Yeah, that's a really good line, Philippe. I've never seen that before. Let me just highlight it for everybody. Everything is amazing and nobody is happy. I've never heard that line, but it is goddamn good, Felipe. Thanks very much for posting it. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not working. If all this money and all these pills and all these therapists and all the rest of it are not solving this problem of depression, then there's something else going on. That all this therapy and all this money that we're throwing at this problem is just maybe alleviating a little bit of the symptoms, but it's not solving the core problem. So we have to first and foremost figure out what the actual problem is. I mean, that's a key issue. You can't solve anything unless you look at the problem and try to figure out perhaps the origins of the problem. That's the point of this conversation, of this broadcast. Okay. Now, first of all, we have to define terms. It's always important to define terms. What is a depression? Well, quite simply, it's a negative feeling that is not caused, I should have put there, is not caused by any proximate event. Like for instance, you get shot in the arm, for instance, to give a grotesque example. You get shot in the arm, you feel pain, right? Why do you feel pain? Because you got shot in the arm. That's the proximate cause, getting shot in the arm. But depression doesn't have any proximate cause. You just feel miserable. Mhm. And it's a negative feeling, a feeling of misery that includes, but it's not limited to, despondency. Despondency is the loss of hope, a sense of meaninglessness to life, anxiety, but not necessarily fear. You always have to distinguish between fear. When you go to a scary movie and you see, oh my God, something's going to happen, you feel fear. But when you're just like stressed and anxious, but there's nothing really scaring you, you're not frightened of anything, but you just feel tense, like your fight or flight response is on a hair trigger and it's about to make you either run or fight, depending on your temperament, right? But there's nothing really happening. There's nothing that's bringing this up. I mean, for instance, if you see a man with a gun walking around the street, you're going to feel anxiety, but there's a proximate cause to that. A man and the gun, a stranger with a gun, and that causes, anxiety, and you're thinking fight or flight. You're sort of like in that waiting to see how it plays out before you decide to either fight the guy with the gun or run away from the guy with the gun. But that's a proximate cause. Here, there's no proximate cause. You just feel anxious for no reason. And you don't necessarily feel afraid. You just feel tense, right? There's also tiredness that often can be confused with indolence. Indolence, for those of you who aren't native English speakers, is laziness. I like to use big words because, it makes me feel important. Anyway, this is a serious issue, though. So no more cheap shots like that. Tiredness, you see it a lot with depressed people that they sleep all the time, but they're not lazy. It's not an issue of laziness. It's like a kind of exhaustion, of mental exhaustion. And one could argue, as I would, that a lot of times that sleepiness, that tiredness, comes from constant anxiety, the constant anxiety that you feel when you're depressed. But again, where does this anxiety come from? There's no proximate cause. There's nothing specific to make you anxious. Okay? And this is all depression. And there are other feelings too. Sleeplessness, which could be considered an expression of anxiety. The notion of, eating too much or too little. Different things, but they all are around the same thing, this negative feeling that has no immediate cause. Sometimes it happens that you have everything going for you in your life. You just scored a big deal, you're making lots of money, everybody likes you, but you feel depressed. It's like, what the fuck, I thought I would get these things and I'd be happy. I thought I'd buy my Lamborghini and I'd be happy. So what the fuck is going on? Well, first of all, we have to, you know, uh, define what depression is, and we also have to realize that it's a modern day problem because, see, the first written accounts of depression, they called it having bad humors or melancholia. Mhm. It was first written about in 2000 before Christ. Okay, 2000 AD are the first written accounts, but we gotta keep in something in mind here. Let's see, the earlier sufferers of depression, they were rich people. And, they were kings and noblemen, they were people high up on the social totem pole who had a materially much easier life than the common man. And how do we know this? Well, because they were written accounts. Only the rich people, the top 1%, could read or write and leave accounts as to how miserable they were. You see my point? See? That's a key issue that we got to understand. The early sufferers of depression, they were the rich people because they left written accounts. Mhm. And they didn't comment on how other people were depressed or having melancholia, like the workers or this, that, the other. They didn't seem to have this melancholia, or however you want to pronounce it. See? Now, the fact that they could write about their melancholia proves that they were rich. Oh, yeah, I said that. Oh, yeah. Sigmund Freud was treating the pampered wives of rich Viennese industrialists. You got to keep in mind that's where psychoanalysis came from dealing with the wives of rich guys, i.e., rich, pampered women, women who had all the money and all the time to do whatever the fuck they want, and they were also depressed and hysterical and this, that, the other. That's who Sigmund Freud treated, by the way. Those were his clients, his customer base, these historical women who had it all. They were basically Karens, okay? And not just Sigmund Freud, but Adler and Jung. That was their client base. Mm? Mm. Or else the young sons, I mean, like the late teenage, early 20 something sons of rich people who, Same thing, right? Okay, so depression only became widespread in the 20th century, and most especially towards the end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st centuries, which corresponds to the rise of industrial affluence. Something that people today don't seem to understand. See, in 1900, or let's go back, comfortably into the past. At 1850, anywhere in Europe, anywhere in North America, life was very hard. Odds were pretty good that if you were living in 1850, you were a farmer or in agriculture or working, peripherally rather to the agricultural industry, quote unquote. I mean, you were a farmer living in some fucking village, right? That was your life. A very small minority of people lived in cities, less than 10%. 90% of people lived in small villages of less than 300 people. That's the truth. Okay. Census data proves this. This is the way people lived in the past. And it was only in the late 19th century, yes, that people started moving to the cities because of job opportunities, because of the Industrial Revolution. Because the Industrial Revolution, you could argue that it started in 1604 or 1700 or really got going in the 1800s. You can argue all those things, but it was really in the second half of the 19th century where all of a sudden you have this huge need for manpower in the factories to create all these goods and services. And this huge need emptied out the countryside of the workers who went to the cities to the factory jobs. And that's when depression really started. And as we see, I mean, we just have to look at it a little bit. People's lives, their standard of living rose exponentially because this industrialization brought enormous wealth to the societies of the West. And this wealth translated itself into luxuries and delicacies that were unheard of to people in the past, even to the richest people of the past. They were available to the common man. Think of something as simple as the ice cream cone. You know, shaved ice with some syrup to give it flavor. You think of that and it's like trivial, right? But you see, in the past, only exceedingly rich people could afford such delicacies. The common man, it was unheard of for him to have an ice cream cone. Maybe he'd have an ice cream cone when it actually fucking snowed. But just like, going to a shop and getting it, that was unheard of. But that's what industrial society brought starting, after 1850. Because before 1850, there was the Industrial Revolution going on. But what's important is that starting roughly in 1850, it's that these industrial developments became widely available to people, to the common man. Okay. And just as the common man started getting jobs in the cities, in the factories, it just soaked up all that labor force and brought it to the cities. You see? And you got to understand the historical context. It's very important for what I'm about to launch into right now. And that is, see, this is my theory of depression. See, human beings for our history since, 4 million years ago, back when we were, what were we? We were these hominids that were scavengers. That's what we were. We were scavengers. We would pick over the bones of the animals that dogs and lions had killed, and whatever was left over, we'd eat it. And there is a very good theory, and I believe it's likely true, that the reason we developed our big brain was because we would eat the leftovers, and what was left over were the calorie-rich bone marrow and brains of whatever animal the predator had killed and left and eaten and moved on, right? And we figured out with rocks we could break the bones and get at those yummy brains and those yummy bone marrows that were full of fat and excess energy, and allowed our own brains to develop. That seems to be the case, but we were scavengers, okay? And from the dawn of our species, we lived in packs, which we call tribes, but they're packs no different than like a dog's packs or a flock of geese or whatever. And see, these packs of any animal, what do they provide? collective security. That's the whole point of them. Okay. Now, tribes were relatively small, not more than 75 individuals. And why do we know this? Well, because human brains can only keep track of between 100 and 150 individual relationships. See, I mean, you have individuals that you know in your life, your grandparents, your parents, your friend, the guy at the store, whatever. And so in your head, you can more or less keep track of up to about 150 relationships. This has been studied. This is not something I'm making up out of my ass. This is actually true. And so the theory is that if you can keep track of up to 150 relationships, that's sort of like on the outside maximum, like the smartest people can keep track of about 150 individual relationships, that's more likely than not that the top size of any tribe was around 75. Okay. Never get so high as 150. Okay. And it's also been studied in whatchamacallit, systems management, that companies that maintain units that are up to 150 workers strong, they tend to be more efficient. And once they start to have like 200, 250 employees in a single business unit, they're not so efficient because the people don't know one another. It's too many people. And they've actually figured out in systems management that around 125 people is like the primo number. You got 125 people in any particular business unit, and it's going to be working at maximum efficiency. And it's something that's been, it's not so much theoretically based as it is by experience. Just that those organizations that hit that number of about 125 people, they tended to be the most efficient. Okay, which is pretty interesting. Anyway, um, oh, I forgot to finish out that thing. Okay, tribes were, what were they? They were extended families and well-known allied families. Okay, not necessarily intermarried, right? But they were allied and been known for a long time. Those were what tribes were. They weren't just a collection of strangers, and they were extended family in the sense of not just grandparents, but like distant cousins, all kinds of people. And of course, there were kidnapped people, people who had been kidnapped from other tribes and learned to work with the new tribe that they were in. They had to do that. They had to comply with the new tribe for their survival. Women, especially. That's why women are so compliant. See, one of the reasons is bride kidnapping was a very, very common thing. And see, a woman who in a new tribe would resist, she would be killed. And so, which women had children of her own and daughters of her own? The women who would comply with whatever tribe she was a member of, irrespective of whether it was a blood tribe or not. You see, that's why women are so compliant, because of that. Anyway, tribes were extended families and allied families. Sorry, I didn't finish that line there. Now, tribes and later villages provide collective security. They provide food, water, shelter, care when sick, because human beings cannot survive on their own. There are a lot of libertarians that say, oh, I can survive on my own. That's bullshit. That's a lie. Nobody can survive on their own. See? Show me the guy who can find his own water, find his own food, and protect himself from all predators and other people all the time. That's a rare individual. That's an exceedingly rare individual. And if that guy is sick, he's going to die because there's going to be nobody to look after him. If he breaks a bone somewhere, he's going to die inevitably. Yeah. I mean, like, remember, like, a couple of years ago in September of 2020, I broke my ankle skydiving. Admittedly, skydiving is a little extreme, but I broke my ankle skydiving and I couldn't walk at all. Right. I was there in a field in fucking Holland, right? In fucking Netherlands, rather, in Texel, on the island of Texel. If there hadn't been other people and an ambulance and so forth, I would have fucking died, of course, because we need other people. We cannot survive on our own. Babies, infants cannot survive on their own. They cannot. They all need collective security. We all need collective security. Okay. Now, the tribes provide collective security, and in return, the individual gives his effort for the benefit of the tribe as a whole. Tribes demand that the individual's work not just for himself, but for the collective as well. And it's quite obvious, okay? I mean, a collective is, by definition, made up of individuals. And so those individuals, they have to contribute to the collective as a whole, to the group as a whole. And that means that, for instance, there's the hunter who goes out and hunts the woolly mammoth. and he might be the one who kills him, right? And he'll eat a bunch of the woolly mammoth, but he'll bring a lot more of the woolly mammoth back to the other people in the collective. Yeah, that's his responsibility. It's a constant pact between the collective and the individual. The collective provides collective security to the individual, but the individual has to provide for the other members of the collective because, of course, you are a member of the collective. You can be in great health, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I have a broken ankle and I can't go and hunt, and so I can't get food. So you're going to have to help me get food until my ankle heals. And then once my ankle heals, it could be that you get sick with the flu and you're knocked out for a few days. Well, I'm going to be hunting and bringing you food. You see? That's how an individual collective relationship works. They both help each other. It's not either or, it's both and. The collective helps the individual helps the collective. The collective makes demands on the individual, but the individual also makes demands on the collective. The individual is demanding collective security, food, water, shelter, or whatever it is that that collective is offering to the individual, and he demands it. And if the collective doesn't meet his desires, then the individual can leave. Just as if the individual does not meet the collective needs of the group, then the individual is expunged and loses that collective security. So you see that the balancing act, it's not even a balancing act. It's a reciprocal dependence. And I'm going to get back to that in quite a bit. I mean, it's a key point of my whole argument. The collective, tribe, village, whatever you want to call it, but that collective that people know that it's there, that it's not some random collective way out there like we are experiencing in our industrial society. No, it's the people we see every fucking day. See, if you've ever been in a situation where you're dealing with the same group of people, say you go on a hiking trip, a camping trip of like a week, just say for the sake of argument, and you go like a bunch, you go like a dozen people, you're going to wind up depending on one another. Of course you are. And you're going to form relationships with one another, and you're going to like some more than others. But even the ones that you don't like, you'll recognize that they have certain skills that benefit the whole group. And you yourself, you're going to feel that you have to carry your weight and contribute to the collective effort. Of course, it's built into us by evolution, okay? Because we are animals. We are animals. I mean, never forget that. This is the key issue here, okay? We are animals, and our behavior has been controlled by evolution. And this doesn't even contradict the issue of God. It could be that God designed us this way. Okay, same result. It's the exact same result. Evolution or God made us the way we are today. And the way we are today depends on these tribes, these little groups, these small, intimate groups. See? Okay. So, thus, the tribe and the individual create reciprocal dependence. Let me just go to the chat real quick, and hit me with a +333 if you get it. This notion of reciprocal dependence, because it's a key component of my argument here. The collective demands of the individual things, it demands of the individual their excess labor, if you will, and the individual demands of the collective security. Provides its security and assistance when it is ill. Okay? That's the reciprocal dependence. And think of the words reciprocal dependence. They depend on one another, the individual and the collective. And the collective is not far away. The collective is the people you know, your parents, your siblings, your cousin Fred and his wife Ginger, these people that you see all the time because you're with the tribe 24/7. You live with them. Great. Chat seems to get the idea. It's very important that you understand reciprocal dependence, because what I am coming to conclude in my whole theory that I'm developing in the nonfiction stuff that I'm writing about is that, see, reciprocal dependence is the most important emotion after the desire for food and the desire for reproduction. It's the most important emotion. And what is an emotion? It's a feeling that drives you to action. Okay? Reciprocal dependence, the need to be needed by the collective and the need to get security from the collective. See, this is so important, and it's central. And the thing is, see, I'm realizing that nobody's discussing this, and it's a central aspect of humanity, of human beings. Like I said, it's the third most important emotion after the urge to survive and the urge to mate. Yeah, and that's how important reciprocal dependence is. And our industrialized society has destroyed this notion of reciprocal dependence by abstracting it. And I'm going to get that in a later slide, but I just want you, I'm just previewing it to you. Let's see, the notion of reciprocal dependence. Nobody's talking about it, but it is central. It is key. Remember when I did that whole presentation of what I would do if I were dictator? A lot of the policies were to recreate in ersatz form the reciprocal dependence that is a bedrock of our humanity. Okay, it's crucial. Okay, let me get on with this now. This need for collective security is what drives human beings to form communities, whether they be fixed in a specific spot, vagrant, that is wandering around, or virtual. See, we need these communities. But what's crucial is we don't need a community just of like-minded individuals. No, we need that dependence where we owe things to the collective and are owed things in return by the collective. Reciprocal dependence. A lot of times in our contemporary society, we say, "Oh, I have a community of, of Magic the Gathering friends." Well, that's just fucking friends because you don't fucking depend on them for your survival, do you? No, you depend on them for your amusement. It's a trivial game, and they can be replaced easily. Or you can just walk away from them, and no harm comes to you whatsoever. I mean, you might regret losing some friends or whatnot, but I mean, really, they're nobody because you don't depend for your survival on them. But a lot of times we talk about a community. When I talk about a community, I'm talking about a group of people that you have a relationship with, and your survival depends on your relationship with them. Your survival, your existence on the planet depends on them. Okay? That's a vastly different thing. Okay? Okay. So, one of the things that is really important is this notion of, this need for collective security is what drives human beings to form communities, fixed, vagrant, or virtual, like I said. Okay? Because we need collective security. We feel it in our bones. And so we try to attach ourselves to various collectives, like sports teams, for instance, like like friends in college and shit like that. We are striving to form these bonds of collective security because it's built into us by evolution, this need to form these attachments that will provide us with collective security. And when we don't feel these bonds of collective security, we feel lonely. But have you noticed that we feel lonely and we feel so incredibly depressed? I mean, let me ask you, chat, and you tell me, have you noticed that when you're feeling lonely, you feel incredibly depressed and low and blue? I mean, sometimes you cry at your loneliness. Have you ever thought to ask yourself why? Why is it that you are experiencing such a powerful, visceral reaction to the fact that you are lonely? And it's simplicity itself. It's because when you are lonely, you feel that you lack collective security and that you can be killed by a predator or an act of God. You see, your hindbrain feels that you are all alone. You live in this industrialized society and you have all these institutions that provide you with collective security. You have the police force, you have the military. The military is guarding the border. Well, at least in the United States, not anymore, I guess, but in theory, the military is protecting the border from foreign invaders. The police in your city or town is protecting all the individuals from the criminals, right? And there's the local food bank or the welfare office or whatnot that can provide you money if you're really, really broke and you need money for food. I mean, it's most of the people who are homeless, they kind of like want to be homeless, okay? Or they're so fucked up with drugs or God knows what that they wind up homeless. But I mean, if a homeless person doesn't want to be homeless, it doesn't take a hell of a lot of effort to get out of that hole. There are a whole bunch of different mechanisms, societal mechanisms that provide this collective security. But the thing is, see, on a visceral level, we don't feel them because we're not in contact with those people. We're not in contact with the cops. When do we see a cop? When a crime happens, of course. Yeah, we don't see them on a regular basis. We don't see them every day, every morning when we wake up. When we used to wake up, when we were a little tribe, we'd wake up at dawn, and who would we see? The other members of our tribe, and those were the people providing us with collective security. We saw them; they were right there, but we don't see them now, and therefore, our hindbrain interprets this as loneliness, and loneliness makes us ache for human company. But why do we want human company? Because we yearn for collective security. We are experiencing an emotional reaction from our hindbrain because our hindbrain is realizing, hey, who is providing us with collective security? I have to make this dumb human feel really, really bad so that he goes out there and meets somebody who can provide him with collective security. Because if he continues on his own with nobody else around and no other human input, he's going to get eaten by a cheetah, or maybe some other enemy human is going to kill him or something. I got to force an emotion that will drive him to seek out the company of other people who will provide him with collective security. That's loneliness. You see what I'm saying? Hit me with a +333 if you get what I'm saying. It's very important that you understand this. The drive for collective security is one of the most important emotions that you can possibly have. And loneliness is an expression of that lack. I mean, and this is, we notice all the time. You look at some optical illusion. Thanks. There is this optical illusion I saw the other day, right? It was like a grid of lines, like there were green lines on a gray background, right? And the thing is, see, when I glanced at it, it seemed as if the lines were bulging around weirdly, like it was in motion. I don't know if you've seen this optical illusion. There are plenty like it. But the thing is, see, when I looked at the lines, at the green lines, and looked at them fixed at each intersection, they weren't moving. They just seemed as if they were moving. It was an optical illusion. Okay. And the optical illusion was taking advantage for my amusement, for the viewer's amusement, of a defect of our eyes, that we perceive movement when none is, when there's a certain combination of factors, right? And it's funny, but it's trivial. It doesn't really affect us, right? But it's the same fucking thing that's going on with loneliness. We have collective security because of our industrialized society, but our reptilian hindbrain doesn't see this, doesn't know this. It's not intelligent enough to understand this. And so it feels the lack of people in our life providing us with collective security. It expresses it as loneliness. And the loneliness is the emotion that drives us to meet other people or try to meet other people. You see? That's where loneliness comes from. Okay. So anyway, there was a little detour on stuff, right? Now, this need to be needed, because that's what we're talking about with this notion of reciprocal dependence. Human beings need to be needed. It's so important that you understand that. That's a key component of reciprocal dependence, because we are getting collective security from the group, which makes us feel good. It strips us, it makes us not feel lonely. When we are in the middle of a group of people and the people know us and they are our tribe, even if we don't like one member or another member, but in general, we fit in, we're part of the tribe, whatsoever that tribe may be, we feel content. Because we are getting that collective security. We don't feel lonely at all. Of course not, because we are with our people. We don't feel lonely. Simple as that. Loneliness is a negative emotion that arises when we do not have that feeling of being with a tribe. You see? But at the same token, the collective demands of us individuals our efforts, obviously, to provide that collective security, because that collective security doesn't provide itself, man. It's a collective security, as the name implies, It's a bunch of individuals who are providing security to each of the individuals, right? And so the collective is making demands on the individual, on you, on me. We, each of us, has to help provide that collective security. That's how it works, right? And have you noticed that we have a need to be needed? Think about it. And we see it all the time. See, I've noticed that I feel incredibly happy when I'm fixing shit around the house, you know? And when my kids are like watching me do it, I feel fantastic. I feel actually on a visceral level much happier than when I simply write the checks for whatever is necessary. When I write the checks or make the transference, it doesn't feel the same at all. Okay? But when I'm doing the specific thing or fixing something, oh man, I feel fantastic because they see me. They see me fixing the vacuum cleaner or whatever the fuck that's broken. And I mean, sometimes I don't even fix it. I just go and get a new one. But them seeing me get it, okay, it makes me feel really happy. And women, when they look after babies and the elderly, they feel happy. They feel incredibly happy. I've told you about that study in Ireland that they did of working women who had to quit to take care of a loved one. And then after a year, two-thirds of those women did not want to return to work because they felt more satisfied by the caregiving that they were doing now than the office work that they had been doing before. Of course, because what happens is the woman feels needed. Somebody is making demands on her. Somebody is making demands on her that she has to fulfill. The baby or the elderly parent or grandparent, and this makes her feel happy. Mhm. And of course, the woman is going to complain about the baby, that the baby shits itself all the time and, cries and cries and blah, 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 all kinds of complaints. It's perfectly normal. See? But if you stop her and pull her aside and say, "Are you happy?" And she'll say, "Yeah, of course." By the same token that the man is incredibly happy when he's fixing shit or when he's actually going and hunting the fucking woolly mammoth and bringing it back. I bet Joe Rogan feels like a $1 million whenever he kills one of those fucking elk that he eats all the time, right? He kills the elk and brings it back, and he feels that, Jesus, I'm bringing food to my family. I am needed. I feel great. We all yearn to be needed, to be personally needed. That these specific individuals need us, need our efforts, our work. Okay. And I'm going to mention this in a little bit later. It's the sunk cost paradox, because I've called it the sunk cost fallacy. Well, it is called the sunk cost fallacy, right? But it's the sunk cost paradox. That is, the more you invest in something, the more you care about it. Mhm. And that's what's going on. It's from this need that we have that goes back to reciprocal dependence. See? Because when we are part of a group and we feel that that group needs us, needs some specific quality that we have, we feel great. Years ago, about 30 years ago, back in 1990, an uncle of mine was diagnosed with leukemia. And my grandparents called me up specifically and they wanted me to tell them all about leukemia. Okay. Because I was the annoying know-it-all. But in the crunch time, when my uncle had leukemia, they called me up and said, "What is leukemia? Because we don't really know. We've seen movies where they die of leukemia, but what the fuck is it?" I mean, they didn't say those words, obviously, but words to the effect. And I explained what leukemia was. And my limited understanding of it at the time, I got to get a lot better at it because of my uncle's illness, right? And I said, you got to look out for this, you got to look out for that, and blah blah blah. And I felt really fantastic because they called me up as soon as they found the news of this uncle of mine. This uncle of mine, he was the husband of my mother's sister, my mother's only sister, my mother's only sibling, as a matter of fact. So he was basically my only uncle, and on that side of the family, at any rate. And the thing is, see, I felt horrible when I heard that he had leukemia, but I'm not gonna lie, I felt fucking wonderful that all of a sudden my entire family was depending on me to give them the correct information about leukemia. And if I didn't know the information, telling them that I could find out and taking notes and going down to the library and talking to some people and figuring out what's what. This was back in 1990, way before the internet shit, right? You have to actually know shit and go out and find shit, right? And I did. And I was needed. And this made me feel fantastic. It made me feel really, really good. And see, I never discussed it with my family, but they sensed how useful I was. And there was this collective good feeling towards me that I was so useful, even if it was this specific thing and this tragic situation. But you see the point. You see how powerful this is. That desire to be needed. Okay. Now keep all of this in mind as we go into when depression arises. In my theory, depression arises when three things are happening at the same time. Number one, the individual's basic needs are met with relative ease or no effort whatsoever. Okay. There's no struggle for water, food, shelter, and basic physical security. Notice this happens with rich people throughout human history. Okay. There are no negative examples of individuals in the society dying in the streets for lack of food and shelter. See? And this is a key issue. There are no negative examples because, see, you could be getting like water, food, shelter, and basic physical security, but you see other people who aren't getting those things, and therefore you will appreciate them. You will appreciate what you've got. You will realize that what you have is special and unique, right? But if you don't have that negative example, you don't have, the constant reminder that other people don't have what you have and they can die because they don't have what you have, like our society today. In our society, we have all these basic things, but we don't see people dying in the streets from dehydration or malnutrition or hypothermia. Now, do we? Of course not, because we have all of these societal mechanisms to prevent that from happening. See? But in the past, this wasn't the case. Huh? Okay, so you have basic needs are met with relative ease, and there's no negative example on the horizon. Okay, that's condition number one. Condition number two, the individual does not have the visceral sense of being under the aegis of collective security of a tribe or tribe substitute, be it village or something else. He doesn't have that visceral sense. This is the key issue, because you want to assuage the reptilian hindbrain, because our visceral emotions come from our reptilian hindbrain. See? You can be experiencing collective security. For instance, you live in a high-rise building, okay? A high-rise building in your own apartment, maybe it's quite the large apartment. And by the way, a large apartment where you live alone is actually scarier than a small apartment where you live alone. For the obvious reason, when you live in a large apartment, like 3 bedrooms and, the whole thing is like, I don't know, 1,200 square feet, 2,000 square feet or something like that. When it's so big, it feels scarier because there's more possibility of threat, or so says your reptilian hindbrain. See, because if you're living in a high-rise tower, okay, you're living in a high-rise tower, you got a big picture window, you're looking out, okay, and it feels exposed. And you have a great deal of collective security, of course, because you're living in a high-rise. It probably has, somebody on the lobby keeping an eye on things, some security guy maybe. It has a gate that only allows in certain people. Your own door to your apartment is pretty fucking thick, and it's got a deadbolt and whatnot. I mean, you're pretty safe. Not to mention the fact that out on the street, there are a bunch of cops, who are patrolling normally, and and maybe you live in a city that has low crime rate. So, your collective security is pretty good. You got water on tap, you got food in the refrigerator, but see, you don't have any other people around. And so your reptilian hindbrain experiences this 2,000 square foot apartment that's all empty, and these big picture windows looking out at the whole city, and feels stress, anxious, even though there's nothing to objectively be stressed about. But there isn't that visceral sense of having collective security. Visceral sense, what is visceral? It comes from viscera, which is your guts. You don't feel it in your guts because you don't see other people. That's the thing. You don't see other people who are providing this collective security. It's invisible. It's there, it's very powerful, but it's invisible. Okay? So the individual does not have the visceral sense of being under the aegis of collective security. And don't give me this bullshit about the ersatz tribal security or community, that bullshit of sense of community. That's so much crap. That sense of community of my friends from Magic the Gathering. Dude, that's not a community. Those are just people okay? And what happens is that the more people try to emphasize these ersatz communities, the more trivial they seem because they're not providing collective security. See? Suppose you have a casual group of acquaintances, not even friends, just acquaintances, and you get together to play Magic the Gathering. I don't have anything against Magic the Gathering. I've never played Magic the Gathering. I'm just making it up, just taking it as an example. Okay, suppose you have a casual group of acquaintances that you get together and play Magic the Gathering, and mentally you consider them, it's a community, but it's just a bunch of guys I know. It's fun. I go there, couple of times a month, maybe have a laugh, have a drink, play the stupid game, and then go home and hang out. So you don't take it very seriously, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. Therefore, you're not going to feel that they are providing collective security. But if you take it seriously, really seriously, you're going to feel that collective security is really at stake. And so you're going to start wanting more from the other participants. You want them to show you that they are delivering collective security. You see? And you're going to start to go a little bit nuts because they're not providing collective security. It's just an amusing game. And you just get together and you call yourselves a community, but you're not actually a community that actually delivers collective security. You see? And you see how dangerous it is to start emphasizing communities where none really exist, because you start to feel more and more anxious because the community, your hindbrain realizes, is not going to protect you when the fucking panther shows up to eat you. And of course, the panther isn't going to show up, but your hindbrain doesn't know this. Evolution for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, has taught you that you better have a group of collective security, or else, maybe the panther will jump out and eat you, which happened all the time in the past. Yeah. Saber-toothed tigers, right? Look it up. They used to eat our hominid ancestors, and it was pretty fucking grim. What they do is, jump on them from behind and stick their fangs right through the frontal of the forehead, and the lower jaw would grab the back of the head and just like chomp. And those two big teeth, big fangs would go right through the brains of our hominid ancestors. And then the saber-toothed tiger would drag away our hominid ancestors and eat them, And so it was an issue. Collective security was an issue. It was built into us by evolution. And so that's what's going on here, okay? And ersatz tribes, ersatz communities show us how bullshit they actually are, the more seriously we take them. And that's how we feel even more angrier towards these communities, because they're not fulfilling the function that we, our hindbrains, think that they should be fulfilling, okay? Now, the third condition: the individual does not have the visceral sense of being needed by a tribe or a tribe substitute. Now, when I say needed, by the way, and I've used the word a couple of times, needed is an undeclinable obligation that, if you reject it, will result in your permanent banishment from the tribe. Okay? It's something that you can't say no to. Mm? You can say you cannot do it because you don't have the ability. Okay? That's different. But you can't prima facie say, no, thank you, I'm good. No, you can't. You have to do it. Even if you fail, you have to do it. You see? And that's kind of like the thing of need, okay? That you have to do it no matter what. You can't say no, okay? And we need this sense of being needed. We need it so badly, okay? So those three things have to happen at the same time. The individual's basic needs are met: food, water, shelter, and with relative ease. It's something that they don't really have to think about or worry that much about, Number one, the individual does not feel a visceral sense of being part of a collective security arrangement. That's the second. And number three, the individual does not have the visceral sense of being needed by anybody. See? That lone individual who has food, water, shelter, no problem, but doesn't have any group and doesn't have anybody making any demands on them, he's the guy who's going to suffer depression. Of course. He's the guy who's going to suffer depression. Okay. Now, depression does not often occur when one or more of these conditions is not happening. See? You can have a guy, and this happened to me. You can have a guy who has no sense of collective security and no sense of being needed, but his individual needs are not being met with relative ease. He's got to struggle. This happened to me, and I remember it very clearly when I got suspended from Dartmouth after my bullshit charge of sexual assault and sexual harassment, which is a lie, and I've talked about it many times. I was allowed to finish out my my term at Dartmouth, and that alone should clue you in that even the administration knew it was bullshit. But anyway, I was allowed to finish out my term and then go on a 3-term suspension. And I was living in the United States, but my family and all the people I knew were back in Chile. You know, I hadn't lived in the States for like 9 years at that point. And I was 23 years old, and I didn't have a place to go. I didn't have any job, no place to go in all of the continental United States. And I had very little money. I had about $1,100, I remember. That's all I had. And so, you know, I had to struggle to find a place to live, to find shelter. And, you know, I had to be very, very careful with my money insofar as what I ate and all the rest of it, and find a job. And it was like fucking hard. And I was not depressed. No, I was desperate, but not depressed. See? And you'll find that desperation, people who are desperate, they're not depressed. When the lack of basic necessities is imminent. It's not going to happen like in the future. No, it's happening right the fuck now. Okay? Which is what happened to me. You don't feel depressed. And the same thing when, you know, you have your basic needs are being met easily, and you don't feel that you nobody's making any demands on you, but you have the sense that there's like a bunch of extended family that gives you like a really good sense of collective security, then you're not going to feel depressed. It's when you don't have that feeling of collective security, and you don't have that sense of being needed, and you do have rather the relative ease of food and water, that's when you get depressed. If one of those things is not happening, then you're likely not going to be depressed. Okay. Now, when the individual, the other reason that depression does not occur is the 3 things could be happening: that you have relative ease, you don't have any collective security, and you don't have that sense of being needed, but you have some great goal that you are pursuing, some goal, some Everest that gives you energy, that gives you focus and drive. And this happens with guys much more than with women. When you have that, then you're not going to be depressed. See, like somebody like Adolf Hitler, to give an example, he didn't have any of those 3 things. He had a pretty miserable life, but he had this vision of where he wanted to be. He had a goal. And it doesn't matter what you think of the goal. You can think it was awful and genocidal and this, that, the other. That's not the point. The point is, see, he had a dream, he had a goal, and he was pursuing it. When a man has a goal, he's never going to be depressed. When he has a goal that he fully has committed to, that it's just his dream and he dreams about it all the time, he's not going to be depressed. He's never going to be depressed. See? No, he'll feel fucking fantastic, huh? Because it gives him something to strive towards. Okay? But the thing is, see, relatively few men, I've realized, actually, I've realized this by being, you know, CRP and getting in touch with a lot of guys. The vast majority of guys cannot come up with their own kind of Everest. Very few can. And I've had to sort of like adjust my thinking insofar as, you know, making content, because it's a reality. Most men, you know, 99% of men cannot come up with some goal to live for. And it's not that they lack the creativity or the drive or the intelligence. No, no, no. They can be extremely intelligent. And they just don't have anything really that they want to pursue. See, and and the fact is, I realize now, very few men have that. And I've had that a couple of times in my life, that I was hell bent for leather on pursuing some specific goal. And whether I reached them or not, that's not really the issue. A couple of times I did, a couple of times I didn't. But it happened to me multiple times. And those times were the most fulfilling times of my life. And I had zero depression. See? And when I've been sort of like kicking around and having no idea what I was doing, that's when I felt the most miserable. That's when I felt depressed. Yeah. See? Okay. So the opposite of depression happens when the individual is part of a collective that perfectly mimics a tribe's collective security and demands on the individual. Now, I'm going to give you a specific example that happened to me that I'm realizing retrospectively was key. It was when I worked on the film crew and when I was directing my own picture. Okay. Now, we had a film crew that fluctuated in size because, some scenes are more complicated. You have more actors and more extras and shit like that. And therefore, you need more production assistants and blah, blah. And sometimes you have like small scenes and you have a small crew. But generally, it was between, minimum 30 and maximum crew, not extras, of 60. Okay. And the thing is, see, when you're on a film crew, you're working hard to get all your shots. You got to be running around, and everybody depends on everybody else. Because you see, when you're going to shoot a scene, you need the actor to know the lines. That actor has to be in wardrobe and makeup and ready for when the camera is ready. And how do you set up the camera? Well, you got to set up the dolly, and you got to set up the lighting. And that takes time. And everything has to be coordinated. And you can't have the actors in makeup sitting around for too long, because then they start to sweat. The makeup starts to run, has to be retouched. It's a whole hassle. So everything has to be coordinated. Mhm. And you have to, the production assistants have to move the crew, move this, that, do all kinds of shit, right? And everybody depending on everybody else all the time. The whole working day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., you depend on everybody else in the crew, and they know it. The makeup people, I remember I fired a makeup woman who consistently kept the camera crew waiting around because she'd do the makeup at the last minute. And of course, all of a sudden the camera is ready to roll and the actors know they're in makeup, and we wait 15, 20 minutes. I remember when I fired her, my whole crew, they were so happy. They were happy. They were thrilled because, yeah, she couldn't cut it. She wasn't doing her job because her job was to have all the actors ready with makeup on, done when we're ready. And she wasn't holding up her end of the bargain. Fuck her. And everybody was happy. And the new makeup lady who showed up, she was great. She was easygoing, did her job, and had all the actors, however many were needed, perfectly made up, right on time, right when the cameras were ready. She got it down to a fucking science, okay? That she would know exactly. It was almost like she'd be like, doing the makeup, and she's like, oh, it looks like the camera's going to be ready, so let me just hurry up and done, ready. And we liked her a lot. And I realized we were all feeling this feeling. We were all high, really. And it was this feeling of being high. We're all striving towards the same goal of making the picture. And we're all feeling just viscerally so excited, and just everybody feeling that they are needed and that they can depend on everybody else. And that was the thing. We felt that we could depend on the others, and the others depended on us, and we had to deliver. I was the director on it, and I remember like the third or fourth day of the shoot, all of a sudden, like, there was this collective verdict from the crew. And the collective verdict was that, yeah, he's an asshole and he's very impatient, but he's always prepared. He always knows what the fuck he's doing and knows exactly how to tell us how to do our job. And as a director, that's your job, to tell others how to do their job or what job to do, right? A director can't be dithering. A director has to be like, okay, we're going to shoot this, shoot that. We're going to do this close up, that close up. And we're going to shoot, first this, first that, go here, go there. Okay, do it. It's in the fucking name, directing, right? And when the director is prepared, when a director has in the morning a shot list where he's going to tell you exactly what has to be filmed, when the crew can depend on the director, then the crew will kill for the sake of the director, because the crew knows that they can depend on the director. And when the director, on top of that, when something unforeseen happens and the director quickly adjusts and changes around and doesn't, cry about it, but just says, okay, we just got to roll with this and do something else now, they appreciate that because they can depend on him, you see. And I felt that, like, on the third or fourth day of the shoot. It was early. It was a 60-day shoot. And all of a sudden, the crew is like, we can depend on this fucker, you know? And a lot of my idiosyncrasies and a lot of things that people didn't like, they put up with them easily because I added a lot of value to the collective. See? And there's that sense, nobody on a film crew is depressed. Everybody's too fucking busy. And everybody has this sense that other people, other departments depend on you. So you don't have time to be depressed. See? And that is an example of where nobody is going to be depressed. Nobody. Because there are constant demands on you, whatever your department, no matter how lowly your job. You can be a lowly production assistant, but somebody needs you. And so you better fucking deliver. And that sense, reciprocal dependence, see? You feel depressed when you don't have reciprocal dependence. You feel depressed when nobody's making any demands on you and nobody's giving you collective security, or at least you sense that nobody's giving you collective security. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So starting in Europe in roughly 1900, we see a rise in depression. Why? Well, industrialization of food supply, water, and shelter, no need for the collective. That's a key issue, see? Because with industrialization of the food supply and water supply and shelter, okay, what's the collective for? Huh? I mean, honestly, think about it. Yeah. The urbanization of society, that is, all these cities sucking up the labor from the countryside and having all these people from the country migrating to the cities, as what happened in Europe and North America in the second half of the 19th century and into the 20th century, what has happened in China over the last 30, 40 years, right? That broke the familial bonds, see? Especially in the past, because today in China, for instance, the people who are in the cities, they can communicate with FaceTime and shit with the folks back home in the village, right? But back in the day, people couldn't do that. There was no fucking FaceTime. There was no fucking internet. And they would leave their little town, their little hamlet, their little village, and they'd go to the big city for the job, and they'd never see them again. Or they'd see them very rarely. Maybe they'd send money back home, but they wouldn't see them. See? And so that bond was broken. That bond that gave that sense of collective security, of reciprocal dependence, not just collective security and not just the need to be needed. It's both reciprocal dependence. Okay. That was the second factor. The third factor is the Bismarckian welfare state. Okay. It was Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Germany, who outflanked the socialists. He was a conservative, but he outflanked the socialists, realizing that if he co-opted some of their welfare policies, the people would vote for him, which they did. And he was the one who created the welfare state. I mean, the beginnings of what became the welfare state. And that prevented people from dying of starvation and exposure in the streets. No more negative examples of lack of collective security. You see what I'm saying? Or of ease of life, rather. And so these factors, we started to see the rise of depression then. Okay. Industrial society replaced the tribe or the village by providing very efficient collective security, but it's abstracted and impersonal. Like I said before, the cop in your city, you don't know him. He'll show up if shit goes down. You call him up and say, there's a stranger, trying to break into my house. A couple of cop cars are going to show up. They'll be nice as can be, but you don't know them. They're strangers to you. I mean, fuck, they could be thieves themselves for all you know. Yeah. Of course, they're not going to be, or likely not, but they're strangers. A stranger is the man who's trying to break into your home. And that's what industrial society does. It abstracts the relationships, makes them impersonal. It's providing you with very, very efficient collective security. but at the price that you don't feel it viscerally. And the people who are providing it, they're strangers to you. You have no relationship to them. You have an abstract relationship to them. You see? The other advantage of the collective security that the industrial society provides is it's the same for everyone, but there's no nuance, no personalization. An example. Suppose, there's some guy, John, who gets drunk and starts flashing people. Okay. What are you going to do? You're going to call the cops. Cops going to show up, put him in handcuffs, throw him into jail. Judge is going to throw the book at him, sexual harassment, public intoxication, a year in prison. Okay. But see, if you know John because he's in your village, and you know that he's going through a rough patch, maybe his wife left him or she died or who knows what, and he's just going through a rough patch and he got drunk, he started flashing people. You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh and you're going to feel a little sorry for poor John, right? You're not going to think that he ought to go to jail for a year. No, of course not, because you know John, and you know John because he's part of your collective and he provides that collective security. And you know that John is a very good whatever it is he does for your collective, he's very good at it. He just got drunk because he was just feeling blue because of some personal loss. And he went and flashed people because when you're drunk, you do all sorts of shit that you'd never dream of doing when you're not drunk, right? And it meant nothing. You see the lack of personalization, the lack of humanity, see? Because the rules are good for everybody, and which is a good thing, right? Because if the rules are even for everybody, then you're not going to have the possibility of abuse. Like, say, for instance, you're in some village and the mayor's kid is a fucking pedophile. Well, you're going to have problems, right? Because he's going to be trying to fuck little kids, and what are you going to do about it? Maybe try to fuck your kids, but you can't do anything because he's the son of the village strongman, right? But in a working society, and let's not talk about the society we're currently living in, okay? But in a working society, industrial society, it wouldn't matter if the kid's the mayor's son. He's a fucking pedophile and throw him in jail. That's what you do. No question. Because the law would be applied equally. And so that's the problem. The lack of personalization of the law. Okay. There's no nuance. There's no personalization, which can be good, but can be very, very bad. Okay. But what's most important? See, the industrial society is providing very, very efficient collective security, but it's not making any visceral demands on the individual. Okay. Think of it. The industrial society you are living in, it doesn't make any demands on you. It makes you pay fees and taxes, but it doesn't make you spend time, devote time. Huh? He's not required to aid in providing that society with collective security. See, in a village, in a tribe, in a wandering tribe of fucking savages, right? The individuals who are providing collective security, they have to pick up a spear to kill the fucking panther or the other tribe that's trying to steal the women, right? They have to actually participate in that collective security. They have to contribute to it, them personally, okay? But in an industrial society, it's abstracted. It's separated from him. He, you, me, we individually do not have to provide collective security. We just pay the taxes, pay the fee, and we hire a policeman and we hire a military man. We hire them. They're our employees. We separate ourselves from the activity of providing collective security. See? We don't provide collective security. It's our hired agents that we pay through our taxes. It's very efficient, but it's completely impersonal. There is no visceral sense that you, me, each of us is providing collective security. That's why I am so in favor of a national service or national military service, because it makes the people feel that they are contributing. It's the sunk cost paradox. See, by eliminating. Okay, well, let me go march through my outline. Industrial society replaced the demands on the individual's time and attention with an abstraction, paying taxes and fees. The elimination of visceral demands on the individual makes him less likely to look after the fate of the nation. Let me repeat that in different words. See, in a tribe, you have visceral demands. You have to pick up the spear to kill the saber-toothed tiger that's trying to eat the little kids of your tribe. You personally have to do it. And you have to risk that the fucking saber-toothed tiger might fucking bite your fucking arm off, right? So you are actively contributing to that collective security. And so you feel that your little tribe matters. It's the sunk cost paradox that I mentioned before. The more you care about something, the more it matters to you. Okay? The more you care, not in the sense of it mattering, but rather you taking care of something. The more you take care of something, the more it matters to you. And you'll notice, have you noticed these parents who have a Down syndrome child? Uh-huh. Which is a tragedy, you know? And the Down syndrome child is a grown man of 40 something. Down syndrome children actually tend to die young. But, sometimes you'll see some parent with some 40-year-old Down syndrome child. And that parent adores the Down syndrome child. Do you know why? Because that parent has spent 40 years looking after that Down syndrome child every fucking day. And what happens is that taking care of that child every fucking day makes them love them more. And that's the truth. See? Because it's a fact of human nature that the more you care for something or someone, the more you love them. That's a reality. Huh? It's like with babies, mothers and babies. See? A mother, her heart will be irretrievably broken if her 10-year-old child dies. A mother will be heartbroken, but she'll get over it if the infant dies after a day or two. And that's the truth. I know a woman. I know her very, very well. I've known her for a good 20 odd years now. Actually, yeah, I'm kind of surprised now. Anyway, she had a baby back in the mid 90s. Well, it must have been like 97, something like that. 97, 98. Her first child. And the child was born with this congenital heart defect. As soon as the child was born, it died. Okay, it lived just literally a few minutes, and then it died. And the parents knew this, and they found out about it in like the third trimester or something. But even if they found out in the first trimester, they wouldn't have aborted the child because they were conservative Catholics. And the thing is, the child died, and it broke her heart. It just shattered her, of course. And she talked about it all the time. But she had more kids, okay? And now she thinks about, oh yeah, that was so sad, like that. Oh yeah, that was so sad, like it happened to a stranger. See, because what happens is that, see, the child died almost immediately. I mean, literally just minutes after it was born. He was born, and it was just a tragedy and just heartbreaking at that time. But what happened was that because she never really cared for the child, excuse me, let me rephrase that because it sounds heartless, but it's not what I meant. I mean, because she never took care of the child, because the child died, like I said, within 5 minutes, okay, because of this congenital heart defect, there was literally nothing to be done. And the child was going to die. Because of this, because she never took care of the child, because it lived such a short time, she never developed that feeling of greater love that she would develop for her other children, because she had several more children after that, and they were all healthy, thank goodness. And it was a non-issue. You see, the more you take care of something or someone, the more you love them. Okay, it's the sunk cost paradox. If you yourself have to go and kill the fucking saber-toothed tiger that is threatening your village, you're going to care more for your village. It's going to matter more because you have taken risks and made efforts to protect it. But if all you have to do is pay taxes and fees, and they are so automatic that you're almost like, oh, I got to pay the fucking taxes, and that's that, you're not going to feel invested in your nation state or your society or whatever other collective you're a part of. Of course not. And you might even feel alienated. I'm going to get to that right now. But see, you're not going to feel that it matters. When you eliminate those visceral demands on the individual to provide and help provide collective security, when you abstract them, then you don't care that much about the fate of your nation. You are less patriotic. Why the hell do you think that military men are so fucking patriotic? Huh? Because they have like a patriotic gene? No. Because you see, they were willing to die for their nation. They actually made an effort to protect it. Okay? Whether they actually went to war or not, whether it was a stupid war or not, that's not the point. The point is, they were thinking to themselves, I am making sacrifices to provide security for my nation. And those efforts, that sacrifice, that time spent in the military, to them, it's a cost. And that's why they care about the nation more than people who never served. You see? And have you noticed how the people who never served sort of like mock people who are patriotic? Because they don't value the nation state. Because they haven't had any demands made on them for the sake of the nation state. The countries where the citizenry are obliged to go into the national service in the military or whatnot, they care about the country. Of course they do, because they spent a year or two or three, as a soldier. They didn't fucking like it, but they realized that they were providing collective security. The Israelis, right? They, let's not get into the whole Palestinian thing, but they perceive themselves to be under attack, under threat, and they are all obliged to be a part of the Israeli Defense Force, right? And so what happens to such people? All those people who are in the Israeli Defense Force, they feel that they sacrificed something for the collective security of their nation. So they care about it. They care about their nation. And look at those countries where that's not the case. Look at those countries where the educated classes don't have to bother at all with any kind of military service. They don't like their own country. And we're seeing it now, by the way, in the United States. Of course, it's because of this, because the sunk cost paradox. The more you put into something, the more you value it and care about it. Have you noticed how often that you scrimped and saved and bought some doodad? Maybe you bought a car, okay? Maybe you're a teenager and you mowed the lawn and did all kinds of crazy ass shit, and you've scraped together a couple $1,000s and you bought like some piece of shit, but at least it was a car. I bet you fucking polished that fucker, until the fucking thing shined, right? Through its rusted paint and shit, right? You took care of that fucking thing because it cost you so much. The sunk cost fallacy makes us do stupid shit, throw good money after bad at the roulette table when we know we should stop betting, and we keep on betting and we lose it all, right? That's the bad part of the sunk cost fallacy. But the good part, the sunk cost paradox, is the more you take care of something, the more you value it and want it to succeed. Industrial society has eliminated this by way of taxes and fees. It's not that taxes and fees are bad. It's that it's abstracted, that relationship. You don't feel that the state, the nation needs you. You just sign a check and done. See? Okay. So thus, by these two mechanisms, the reciprocal dependence is broken. That need that we have, it's broken. Alienation only came into vogue with the Industrial Revolution. Before that, there was no such thing as alienation. Why? Because you were in some village and the people in the village needed you. You knew that they needed you and you needed them. Okay? For them to provide you with collective security and for you to aid them in providing that collective security and whatever other efforts you would give to that village. So nobody was alienated. It only started happening with the Industrial Revolution when that reciprocal dependence was broken and abstracted and made more efficient overall, but it broke that visceral relationship between the individual and the collective. Alienation is the term of art for that broken reciprocal dependence, okay? Whenever you hear alienation, understand that it's referring to this emotion that is broken. I mean, Marx and a whole bunch of other people have defined alienation all kinds of ways. But as far as I'm concerned, this is alienation when that reciprocal dependence is broken. Industrial society broke reciprocal dependence not on purpose. Okay. It wasn't thinking, rubbing its hands together. Ooh, how could I fuck over people? No, they did it in order to eliminate the inefficiencies of small collective arrangements because they are inefficient, and to free the individual to pursue his own goals and occupations. It was not an evil plot. Okay. I mean, I want to make this real fucking clear. I mean, people think that, oh, it's a conspiracy. Oh, the Jews did it. Oh, the Illuminati did it, or the Freemasons, or whoever the fuck. Fuck off, you fucking nincompoop. It wasn't that. It was for obvious, immediate benefit. See? Because when an industrial society creates this condition that is more efficient, it benefits everybody. And it allows people to devote more of their energy to other more fruitful endeavors. See? Instead of having a bunch of little collectives providing individual collective security, if you have one big nation state doing it for everybody within its borders, then everybody can stop, holding a spear and being worried about shit and start focusing on their own individual pursuits to the betterment of the whole nation state in the aggregate. You see what I'm saying? So it's not an issue of an evil plot. And it's not that everybody suddenly became like fucking decadent. First of all, people have always been semi-decadent, okay? And it's only with great effort that we control our baser appetites, number one. And number two, see, this breaking of reciprocal dependence, it had advantages. You have to think of it in the following terms. It's not that reciprocal dependence was broken. Reciprocal dependence broke as a result of policies that were being pursued that were beneficial to the people in the aggregate. Okay? You see what I'm saying? Mm. Mm. God damn, that coffee's cold. Anyway, moving on. Because what happens is that when the industrial society eliminates the inefficiencies of small collective arrangements, it increases the magnitudes of the overall economic output of a society and thereby makes the society much, much richer. I mean, it's very fucking obvious. See, the Industrial Revolution made Western society so rich, so fast. Okay? It was unprecedented. The other thing, too, is that the industrial society standardized justice by way of the rule of law, which theoretically eliminated injustices, because we have to remember these small collectives were rife with injustice. There were constant battles over injustices because it was not all standardized. And a lot of times, personal influence and personal prestige would sway the rule of law. And that's a fact. And, any of you who have ever lived in a small town, you'll kind of know this, that, the law is the law, except for certain people. There's certain people who are like more important and they can get away with a lot more. They can get away with murder if they play their cards right and they're important enough. Fuck yeah. See? It happens all the time. And look at Joe Biden's kid. The guy is fucking, Jesus Christ, a total piece of shit. But he's getting away with just about everything, And that happens. And it's something that we don't necessarily want because it causes a lot of resentment. Okay. And that resentment eventually expresses itself. Hunter Biden is not going to end well. When Joe Biden dies, Hunter Biden is going to go to jail for 20 years because so many people resent the fact that he's getting away with all kinds of shit, with money shit, his bullshit art, all kinds of shit. Literally snorting coke off the ass of Russian hookers, right? With impunity. No, dude, man, that fucker, he's going to go to jail for 10, 20 years, easy, without breaking a sweat. But the second that Joe Biden dies, okay, before that, no, he's getting away with it, see? And that's what happens when these small collectives, we're seeing it in the macro sense with Joe Biden's kid, but in the past, it was all of these small collectives, all of these little towns and hamlets and small communities, all of these tribes, all of these wandering tribes in the 100,000 years ago and shit. That's what was going on. See, And all of those injustices created resentments, and sometimes those resentments were never assuaged, never fixed. See, industrial society fixed that. And so we can't look at industrial society as all negative. Oh, they just what they took from us, industrial society. Ted Kaczynski was right. Fuck off. First of all, Ted Kaczynski was wrong. I did a video about it, a webinar about his whole book, which is just fucking nonsensical. The guy was a fucking murderer and a fucking retard insofar as his stupid ideology is concerned, with obvious internal contradictions, as I explained in that webinar. You can go check it out. It's in the index. But anyway, industrial society is not the big bugaboo. It had a lot of advantages. It did create enormous wealth. You yourself who are listening to me now, find out what kind of people you came from, okay? Odds are pretty good that your great grandparents were fucking peasants in some shithole country, God knows where, uneducated, illiterate, plowing the fields morning, noon, and night. And you'd be in that same fucking boat were it not for industrial society. And that's a fact. Okay, so don't give me the shit that industrial society is so bad. Okay? Because if we were to magically eliminate industrial society and go back to the way things were 150, 200, 300 years ago, you, my friend, would be looking at the ass end of a couple of oxen who'd be pulling some plow that you'd be steering, and you'd be working that gig from 4 a.m. in the morning till fucking 8, 9 p.m. at night. That would be your fucking life, looking at the asses of a couple of oxen. That would be your destiny, were it not for industrial society. So fuck off that industrial society is evil, okay? I mean, I'm really serious about that, because I have to admit, I find it so irresponsible for people to say, industrial society is so bad. Fuck off, you fucking retard. Dude, it's wonderful, but it has problems. There's nothing wrong with saying that something is wonderful and yet at the same time has problems, and we have to figure out a way to fix them, okay? I mean, I can have like a fucking Ferrari, and it's I don't know, its fuel injectors aren't up to snuff, right? I can say, yeah, the Ferrari's fucking awesome. I just got to fix a couple of things in the engine, but it's fucking awesome. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So anyway, rant over. Moving on. The broken reciprocal dependence relationship between individual and the collective has been mimicked by industrial society to ensure the mental health of individuals and therefore the endurance of the nation state. That was pretty awkward phrasing. Let me say it a different way. See, reciprocal dependence has a bunch of positives that are really fucking obvious. Mhm. And the nation state, the industrialized society that we're living in now, wants to mimic some of them because it's just to the benefit of the industrialized society. And the principal one is the nuclear family. Because you see, in the past, there were no nuclear families. They were all extended families. It wasn't just mommy, daddy, and kitties and the dog, and that's it. No, 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 no. It was mommy, it was daddy, it was the grandpa and grandma, and maybe the other grandma and the other grandpa. And there was the aunt and the uncle and the cousins and the great aunts and that spinster aunt and that crazy uncle who did all kinds of weird shit with the fucking chickens and shit, and all kinds of people. And then there was that other family, the Haydens, the Hayden family. We're not related, but we've known each other forever. And the Hayden's great grandfather was friends with our great grandfather, and we're sort of like allied in our fucking town, And so, yeah, we've all been friends and extended family, and we're all like a bunch. And when we get together every weekend, on Saturdays and Sundays, right? Well, 30 people sit down to lunch or dinner or whatever the fuck. Yeah, that's our fucking family. Nobody had a nuclear family. It just didn't exist. It was all extended family. Okay. And the industrialized society, well, they fomented the nuclear family starting in the 19th century because of the prostitution. I'm not kidding. Because in the, everybody's saying that all these OnlyFans girls, they're all like fucking whores and they're all prostituting themselves. And I've actually interacted with a few girls on my Telegram channel. And, they go from the, the OnlyFans to the seeking arrangement to the soft prostitution to the hard prostitution slide awfully fucking quick. Okay. I mean, there are a lot of fucking young women today who are basically prostitutes. Okay, and I've told these young women that I've interacted with, stop. It'll corrode your soul, and it will. Okay, no whore ever wound up living happily ever after. Every whore ends badly. Okay, I was talking to one fucking girl, poor fucking thing, 20 years old. I mean, a fucking child. And I know it was a girl. She wasn't catfishing me or gaslighting me or any shit like that, because I had her take a picture with my name and date on it. And it was like, it was for real. 20-year-old kid, you know, and she's basically a whore. She's had 20 partners. She was a virgin when she started college less than 2 years ago. And now she's a fucking whore. I mean, like a whore, like getting paid to fuck. Okay. And she seems like the nicest girl. I mean, frankly, I looked at her and I said, Jesus, man, I wish I'd have a daughter as nice as her. She seemed like a cute young thing, and she's a fucking whore. She told me, and I told her, get out of the fucking life. You know, I have to admit, it was a disturbing interaction that I had last week. But anyway, the point I want to make is that, see, this isn't the first time that this has happened. Back in the 19th century, when in England, these industrial cities were absorbing all these men from the countryside, the men were going to the cities to work in the factories because they paid better money, and they'd be sending their money back home to their parents and perhaps their wives, but just trying to send more money back to the countryside, right? And these men, well, they were single and they were men and they wanted, they got horny, and so all of a sudden there was all these prostitutes. And remember Jack the Ripper? He killed a bunch of hookers, right? And the famous story of Jack the Ripper. I assume that you all know it. You see, that story, the reason, I mean, you got to understand, hookers were so prevalent in London at the time. It was an enormous population. Something like one woman out of three in London was a hooker. Yeah, a streetwalker, just a flat out hooker, prostitute. One in three. Okay. I mean, think of the fucking numbers we're talking about. Hundreds of thousands of women were hookers. I mean, they earned their living hooking. Okay. Street walking, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Either in brothels or walking around. And Jack the Ripper famously killed off a bunch of streetwalkers, not girls in brothels. But anyway, the point. See, why were there so many prostitutes? Because the men there who were working in the factories. And so what did society start to do? They started fomenting the nuclear family to eliminate prostitution, because prostitution, of course, brings with it a whole host of problems of crime. Okay. And there's child kidnapping, of course, which is horrifying. They kidnap, young girls, 6-year-old girls, and throw them into a bordello where they work cleaning and doing all sorts of things until they have their period, and then they put them out on the street and start selling them off. This is horrifying. That was what was happening in London in the 19th century, right? There are the pimps, of course. I mean, all kinds of criminality. I mean, you want to get rid of prostitution because of the criminality that comes along with it, okay? Let alone the moral fact of it, right? William Gladstone was big on this thing, right? He was a big, save all the prostitutes kind of guy. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, the nuclear family was an invention, because the extended family, well, it provided the men with a stability, because it's not just that there were a lot of hookers. The men indulged in a lot of violence, a lot of gambling, a lot of illegal activity, because there was not the leveling and controlling influence of the extended family. And any of you who have ever been in an extended family will know what I'm about to say. When you are embedded in an extended family, your aunts, uncles, let alone your parents and grandparents, but all of these people around you, they exert enormous control over you. They keep you from being weird. Huh? Yeah, they do. They keep you from being weird and doing shit that is, wrong. The extended family has a noticeably salutary effect on young men. And it really helps them. And that's why you look at the whole incel movement, and also Antifa. Because remember, Antifa is the flip side of the incels. They are brothers, Antifa and the incel, just on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but the same fucking problem. Excuse me. The problem being, of course, that these men don't have the guidance and the moderating influence of an extended family. See? That's what's going on. And so, anyway, um, The industrial society has tried to mimic the effects of reciprocal dependence by emphasizing certain institutions and certain activities. The number one is the nuclear family, and trying to foment the nuclear family all through the 20th century. Uh, that is typical. They are trying to mimic what a reciprocally dependent relationship was, whereby you had an extended family and a collective, providing collective security, and you as an individual helping in that provision of collective security. The industrial society lit on the nuclear family, because once they lit on the nuclear family, prostitution sort of like evaporated, criminality decreased noticeably, and the men were a lot more, frankly, controllable. People forget, but in the 19th century, there were a lot of industrial riots in the 19th century and the early 20th century. But with the fomenting of the nuclear family, whereby the man worked at the factory and had to provide for the wife and kids, and the wife didn't work, it provided a noticeably calming and controlling effect on the men. Because the men, they had a wife and kids, and the wife and kids depended solely on the man's income. So he wasn't going to go on strike. He wasn't going to cause any kind of problem. And if he did go on strike, he wasn't going to break the machinery. Back in the 19th century, when they went on strike, they would destroy the machinery of the factory. And later on, they wouldn't dream of it, because the striking factory worker would realize, if I destroy the machinery here and the strike eventually ends, I'm not going to have a job because the machinery will be broken. I can't allow that to happen. So I'll go on strike, but it'll be peaceful. You see how calming the nuclear family was? And that was a direct policy of the industrial society, of the industrial nation state, to calm down the men so that they could be more manageable, more docile. Okay? Now, another thing too is that there was a lot of emphasis on communities, the religious community, emphasis on religious community, even though the religious community is just what, a bunch of people who just get together and, sing songs and chant hymns and shit like that, right? There was no sense of real collective security being provided for by the church. The collective security was being provided for by the state. The church was just an element within the state, see, and as a practical matter. The church, the various churches, Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, they could all claim until they're fucking blue in the face that they're independent and above the state. But as a practical matter, they're just another little institution within the state, controlled by the state. They don't have any freedom of movement, and they certainly don't provide any kind of collective security. It's just an empty little community, quote unquote, that mimics that reciprocally dependent relationship that people had in their tribe, in their actual tribe, be it a tribe or a small village or hamlet that was independent from any kind of centralized authority. Okay. And so those communities have been fomented. And another thing that I've noticed is the emphasis on physical fitness. See? And we've noticed this a lot in the lift movement within the manosphere. See, when you spend a lot of time doing physical exercise, whatsoever that physical exercise may be, like regimented, at a gym and shit like that. Well, what happens is that you get an endorphin rush, and you feel, because you're in a gym with other people doing exercise, you feel similar to the reciprocal dependence. Because see, tribally, back in 2,000 years ago and earlier, right? You all in your tribe or village or whatever the fuck, your little collective, you would all be working together, physically working together. Because of course there weren't any fucking, desk jobs at that time. There were no fucking cubicles, no fucking computers, right? You'd be working in the fields or out hunting all together. Physical activity in close proximity to one another. Like the gym. And think about it. Think how when you're at the gym, you feel really good. But, sometimes you feel really good and you're not even fucking doing any fucking exercise. Like, I've noticed that at my gym when I go to play squash, right? I have to pass through where all the machines are and everybody's, jogging or doing this or that or the other, right? I go to a place called Tetra here in Kharkov. And it's a great place. It's one of the two places I have good squash courts. And what happens is that, I go to the gym where the squash courts are, right? And I'm waiting around for my instructor or my partner or whatever. And I just started getting like a contact high from all the other people who are working out there. See? Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Anyway, moving on. Um, so depression, to go back one slide and to reiterate, depression arises from three things. Basic needs are met. You do not have, the individual does not have a visceral sense of being protected by collective security, even though he is, but he doesn't feel it. Okay. That's the second condition. And the third condition is the individual does not have the visceral sense of being needed by the tribe or other people. Those are the three conditions for depression. See? And they all arise from that collective individual relationship that has been broken, what I keep calling reciprocal dependence. That relationship between the individual and the collective that allows both sides to feel that they are giving something and they are depending on something. Do you see? Okay, so that being said, the people that make up the industrialized nation states are more and more demoralized, that is, depressed, because of the loss of reciprocal dependence. Patriotism. The nation states that have had some goal or outside enemy, think Nazi Germany, think the US and Western Europe during the Cold War, they've been able to postpone this demoralization. A lot of people look back fondly on the days of the Cold War. I do too, as a matter of fact. Because at that time, there was a sense that there was an enemy, the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact, and those tanks that they had ready to roll across Western Europe. It was scary shit. No, really. It really was scary shit. I grew up in that whole era during the 70s and the 80s. I remember when, the Time magazine would have on its cover detailed explanations of the SALT and SALT II treaty negotiations. Okay. SALT was strategic arms limitation talks. And there were talks, right? And they'd go into details about what this guy said and that guy said, diplomatic shit. And you'd be like, who the fuck cares? But at the time, everybody cared because there was the clear and present danger of a World War III, i.e., nuclear war with the Russians. It was scary shit. And it made everybody feel that they were a part of something. Nobody was demoralized then. Nobody was depressed then. Yeah. There were depressed people here and there, sure. But for the most part, no, everybody felt good. And you can tell when you go on YouTube and look at those man on the street interviews taken from the 1970s and 1960s, and look how the people look. They look lean, they look happy, they look clear eyed, like they're on their way somewhere. They look well dressed, taken care of, nice hair. They look the opposite of demoralized. They look upbeat, and they're in the middle of the fucking Cold War. Look at the Nazi Germans during the Second World War when their cities were being firebombed by the Allies. And let's not forget, the Allies, had they not won the war, Curtis LeMay, Dwight Eisenhower, and Winston Churchill, they would have hung for the war crimes they committed. Let's never forget that. And ditto with Douglas MacArthur and George Patton. They all would have hung for the war crimes they committed. Never forget that. Anyway, the Nazi Germans, right, in World War II, when their cities were being firebombed, they had parades. They were happy. Yeah, because they had that sense, okay, that they were under attack. And there was that sense that the nation really needed them for its survival. That need to be needed. Patriotism comes from that. Okay? But we don't have that anymore. And that's why people are becoming more and more demoralized, more and more depressed. Because industrial society works too well. That's what's going on. Okay? I mean, it's been 2 fucking hours of presentation of this shit, but that's the bottom line issue. Industrial society works too well and is not calming and soothing the reptilian hindbrain that we have. You see? The industrialized nation states will not survive unless they figure out a way to fix the broken reciprocal dependence in a way that is viscerally effective to the majority of the population. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that our industrialized nation states, which is what we have today, they're all going to go down the tubes unless we figure out a way to make each and every citizen a participant, a real participant with skin in the game in the nation state's future. And if you noticed in my presentation of what I'd do if I were a dictator, it was all about that, making demands on the people, making demands on the people, making them do shit for the nation state. Not like slave labor, no. To inculcate that feeling of the sunk cost paradox, that the more they contribute, the more they care about something. More they contribute, not in money, not money. Money is an abstraction. It's not an issue of raising taxes. No, it's forcing people, forcing everyone, no matter how high up or how lowly, everyone to do 2 years or 3 years of national service, unpaid, doing shit jobs, cleaning up all kinds of crap, doing all the dirty work for 2 years, doing like a weekend a month or something, and 1 week per year of National Guard or some shit like that, so that people feel that they have contributed to the nation state and therefore they will take care of the nation state. See, that's what has to be done, because people need others and they need to feel needed. If you force them to do something where they are needed, they will respond. Our industrial society is not providing that feeling. It's as simple as that. And it will collapse very, very soon. It's collapsing as we speak. It's going to collapse very soon unless it figures out a way to supply this. That's the conclusion. And see, this depression thing, as you can tell, I'm basically saying that the people who are depressed now, they're just the bleeding edge. We're all going to wind up in the same place, because the depression, what it is demoralization. See, it's demoralization. It's that lack of feeling of caring for the nation. You see what I'm saying? It's very important that you understand this. And here, basically, this is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to start taking questions. Hang on a second. I don't even know if you fuckers like heard me. Did I? Let me see. Oh yeah. So everybody's been hearing me the whole time. Good. Okay. So that's basically my presentation. Let me go back to the. I'll stick to this slide, which keeps the three components of depression on screen. It's there on your right hand, on the right hand column. And let me bring myself up. Okay. So yeah, because I want you to see that and keep it in mind. And let me see. Let me just copy the link to join. I'm going to post it right now. And while I'm waiting for you guys to start showing up to ask questions, I'd ask you please to keep it on point, at least initially, insofar as your questions and whatnot. Oh yeah, Mateo has asked this before. It's a random question, but I'll tell you real quick. The guitar solo that I posted on that video, you can Google on YouTube. I'll go to YouTube and look for Limelight guitar track, and you'll find it. Because what it is just the basic guitar track without the drums or bass or vocals. See, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so Chris O, how's it going, Chris O?
Hi, Coach.
What's on your mind, man?
2 questions regarding the presentation. The first one is about a small point that you made, but it's actually revolutionary for your entire content. The notion that not all guys have a mountaintop. How did you come about that?
I realized it just by talking to different guys. Yeah. I realized that few guys have a mountaintop, and that's something kind of weird to me, because I usually always have like some goal or vision that I see that I'm pursuing at any given time. But it turns out that that's not the case, not for a majority of people, which, like I said, I find it kind of shocking.
Because most guys seem to have a goal, a better job, a better car, a marriage, a trip. But how do you
Yeah.
distinguish that from a mountaintop?
Well, because like all those things that you're talking about are pretty quotidian. I mean, having like a better car, okay, big deal, you know. And like becoming like the CEO of Exxon, that's a fucking mountaintop, right? That's fucking hard, right? Getting like a Ferrari, and that's not that big of a deal. I mean, you see my point. One of them is it just demands a lot of effort and planning and all the rest of it. The other is just, figure out a way to make a lot of money, which is not necessarily the same thing. See? And most of the time they're not even thinking about getting a Lamborghini. They're just thinking of getting like, I don't know, like some, they own a $30,000 car and they want to get the $60,000 car, and on top of that, they're going to lease the fucking thing. So it's like, it's trivial. You see what I'm saying?
Is there any advice you give to guys to kind of up the ante and get a higher goal rather than something more quotidian?
Well, no, I don't think that that's the right approach to it. Because the thing is, see, if you have a goal, you don't have to look for it. You'll know it. See, it'll just be there. That's the thing that you want to pursue.
Okay.
And this notion, I mean, think of it. The way you're stating it, it's basically saying, how do you find a goal? As if it's something that you put in front of a person, like they're like a cat, and you put like a ball of string in front of them. But that's not how it is. It's not that you find it and you put it in front of you and you chase it. No, it's there, and I realize that some guy, I mean, I didn't overemphasize it, but I guess it might be something like a big deal, because it's just obvious to me, because listening to a lot of guys, they don't have any goal. But the other thing I've noticed is that a lot of times when you have a goal, you see it in your daydreams. Because in your daydreams, I'm always a firm believer in examining your daydreams, because in daydreams you express the things that you really want. Okay, like let me give you an example. When you're a kid, when you're a 16-year-old kid, you dream about being a famous rock star, right? But what's really going on? You don't really want to be a rock star. No, you want recognition. Why do you want recognition? Because you're 16 years old and you're nothing. You don't have anything to show for yourself. You're literally at the bottom of the pyramid, right? And so you want recognition, see? Because with recognition comes girls, with recognition comes friends and getting invited to the cool parties and all that good shit, right? And so you daydream about being a rock star. But what you should be doing is thinking to yourself, okay, I'm daydreaming about being a rock star. What do I really want? Oh, I want recognition. Is there another way for me to get recognition? Perhaps, maybe I don't know how to play electric guitar, but perhaps I can get recognition by, I don't know, because I'm actually good at magic and I like to do magic. Maybe I could do magic and that'll give me like, more recognition. You see what I'm saying here?
I see what you're saying. It just seems revolutionary to go from an assumption that everybody has a mountaintop to now saying, well, 1% of the guys has a mountaintop, so nothing to be done about it. Just there has to be some encouragement for people to find that way to get out of depression and to have a better life.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I say, that a minority will get out of their depression because they have some goal. And the fact is, those guys who do have that goal, they never get depressed to begin with, because they're too busy pursuing their fucking goal, right? But the guys who are depressed, it's these three reasons in combination, okay? Always the three, see? The individual's basic needs are met with relative ease. That is, he has a life of relative comfort, okay? I mean, and do keep in mind, like guys, and you're a guy, so you're happy if you're living in a fucking hovel, okay? And with fleas and cockroaches, you don't care, because guys don't really give a shit about that kind of thing. Girls worry about that kind of thing. They want their little room or whatever to be all nice and tidy and shit, but guys don't give a fuck, right? So if you're getting like basic shelter, basic food, and basic water, that is relative ease for a guy. And that's actually detrimental to a guy. That's the one negative, the first negative. The second negative is, of course, that sense of not having collective security. I insist, our industrial society does provide us with collective security, but the problem is that our hindbrains are not, for lack of a better word, designed to have that be fulfilling. What gives our hindbrain a sense of satisfaction and knowledge that we do have collective security is when we're surrounded by our bros, by our close family, our close friends. I mean, when you're a part of a team, of a sports team, basketball or football, and you're well regarded by the other members of your team, okay? You're not like, on the outs because they think that you're not very good or something like that. But if you're considered capable, you feel a tremendous camaraderie with your other teammates and they feel it towards you. And that's an example of it, of that collective security. See?
Sure.
And so, yeah. But the more I think about it, this notion that a minority have a great mountaintop, it's not really surprising. There are relatively few guys who've got what it takes to become great men. It's not for everybody. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. The second question pertains to the last point, to the conclusion that kind of unless society changes, it will collapse. Well, we can't really expect things to change. I mean, you had the video about being a dictator. That's that is a proposal, but in practical sense, our society is not going to find ways to alleviate that, especially with all the polarization that's going on. So, in that sense, is the collapse inevitable?
Well, yeah, there'll be a collapse, and in that chaos, there'll be something new will pop up. That's inevitable because it always happens. That's the cycle. See, we'll have a collapse, okay? And what'll happen is that there will be food shortages and all kinds of shortages of different sorts. And this will end the depression. And some people who are too far down the depression hole, they'll just commit suicide or wind up dying, easy pickings, okay? And from the survivors, something new will arise. It happens every time.
It just seems
Go ahead.
It just seems it gives another argument for waging some sort of conflict in the near future to kind of give people a purpose and something, a goal to do.
Yeah, a conflict would be good. Yeah. But see, if it's a nuclear conflict, then all bets are off now, aren't they? Okay. So you have to be careful what you wish for because you might get it. You see? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Coach. Good
No
content.
problem. Yeah. I'm glad you liked it. Thanks very much, Chris. Take it easy.
Till next time. Bye.
Till next time. Hey, Serene, how's it going?
Hello, Coach. I'm hanging on. So my question is, say like I know, a few other guys, not many, not as many as I'd like, but I want to do something to reinstate this feeling of collective dependence and start a community. Like what can a young guy with a few other guys do other than, moving towards like an Amish way of life?
Move towards an Amish way of life in the middle of fucking nowhere. That's basically it. That's the way to go. See? Yeah, because
so my plan to move my brother and a few of our friends to Alaska and, start, a life that's a little bit out there and, hopefully bring some women on after that and, keep them
Sounds
at
like a
home and
plan.
like
Sounds
buy
like
a
a
big
plan.
farm, put all our houses, close together, like make like a block of houses. Hopefully if we get a few more people, that's the best way, you think?
Yes, exactly. And far enough away from civilization that you really are dependent on one another. Because also what's going to happen is that, see, once you really realize that you're on your own, you'll be surprised that the relationships between you will smooth out. And
Absolutely.
You'll be willing to live with a lot of shit that in other circumstances you wouldn't tolerate because you're going to be focused on, well, the guy's kind of like an asshole, but he's really good at this or that.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I've been hiking, and once you get to the point where you're like almost a day away from where, once you're into the woods where you're almost a day away from where you can get to anywhere, everyone gets along. Also, Coach, I know you said it was going to sound crazy to the other guys. I turned 25 this year,
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I don't know. You said it like girls would change their opinion of you once you turn 25, and it's like they're psychic and they can just tell like if a guy's 25 and like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Okay.
All
Be
right, thanks,
specific.
coach. See you later.
What's happened?
Well, so this summer, for instance, I was out. I got a canoe. I was out, paddling around on the lake, and we were driving by the shore, and like this girl waved to us at the beach, and this is kind of the kind of girl I would have like drooled over in high school, but she waved us over and came and said hi. I gave her my number. Nothing happened of it, but still, it's crazy.
Yeah, that happens. That happens.
All right,
Yeah,
talk
get
to you
used to it.
later.
Take it easy. Hi, Christopher. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's on your mind,
Okay,
man?
great. Hey, I'll stay on topic here. However, I was carjacked on Tuesday night.
Okay, that sucks,
uh,
man.
yeah, I
That
was,
wasn't me. It wasn't me. I
no,
promise.
yeah, it's okay.
I was here in Kharkov carjacking people. I wasn't where you are.
Yeah. So
So anyway, go ahead. What happened,
I
man?
was doing DoorDash and, some crazy, whatever it is, I won't use the terminology, but, um, and then afterwards, it turned out that I had actually stopped a burglary in progress, because the guy had another target in mind and then
Yeah,
decided to come after my truck because I drive a F-150 XLT, whatever.
yeah.
And and it turned out this guy had done the same thing to like three other people that night, like on the
Jesus.
same street. And
Uh-huh.
later on, and I was kind of banged up, I was kind of bruised up. I got hit in the face with a couple of bricks and fought the guy off.
Jesus. Uh-huh.
And so later on that night, I get these inboxes from my friends on social media, people I actually know in person, right?
Yeah.
Not just
Mm-hmm.
some random friend. And half the group was saying I should have just been a good victim, and the other half was condemning me. And like a few people said, well, I'm glad that, you know, you're okay and stuff, but, had they been there, we all would have got charged with murder because we would have just tore this guy apart.
Yeah.
And like, on my NCIC, I have like handle with care because I have PTSD. And even the cop that had showed up, he was like, dude, I'm glad the guy got away because you could have just tore into this guy and that would have been a whole crap show with the paperwork and all this other stuff. But it turns out later on this guy he's wanted by immigration for like human trafficking and like
Jesus
aggravated
Christ.
murder. So
Okay. A
um
real piece of work. Okay.
yeah, so my whole question around that is the actual response from people that I knew that said about being a good victim. Is that like this demoralized frame of
Yes.
mind that they
Yes.
have to be part of this collective that just says, just have this level of vaginitis that people walk all over you?
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
and then like people who say, well, when I find this guy, whether the police find him or not, he's going to end up in a torture reel or something like that. I
Well,
mean,
these people are saying that you should just roll over and be the good little victim, right?
mhm,
They've given up.
yeah,
It's as simple as that. I mean, come on, right?
mhm,
Uh, they have decided at some conscious level that they're not going to put up any kind of resistance to anything, and they're just going to wait for some higher authority to save them. Now, if that's not demoralized people, I don't know what is. But that's what it seems like to me. And if I were you, I'd say good to know. And I would, not like, make a big to do about cutting them out, but just,
mhm.
phase them out, as they say.
Yeah,
Just,
that's what I've been doing.
yeah, because those people, and you don't have to do like a big fight or anything like that. Just,
No,
stop calling them.
yeah, exactly.
And if they call you, then you're polite and friendly, and you never follow up on anything. Because
Right,
why would you want to be friends with people that for a fact are just going to pussy out on you?
right,
Huh? And the other friends, the ones who are like, dude, man, if I were there, I would have kicked the fuck out of that fucker, man. I mean, I would have fucking killed him. That motherfucker you want to be friends with, of
exactly.
course,
Yeah,
because that guy, and it could be all bluster or whatever the fuck. It could be that he pisses his pants when it actually happens, right?
sure.
But more often than not, it's not going to happen because those guys, if they box themselves in with those kinds of statements, their sense of pride is going to prevent them from pussying out, even if they're scared shitless. They'll be like, shit, man, I can't back off because then I'll look like a complete pussy, and they'll go for it, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, because that's human nature, right? So my thinking is that those guys who said, man, that is just fucking awful, and you know, I would have helped you to kick the shit out of them. Those are the guys that you want to be friends with. And by the way, for your PTSD, I would, if I had PTSD, this is not medical advice, I'm just saying this. If I had PTSD, I would get myself some psilocybin mushrooms, and I would take a couple of trips,
There you
at
go.
least 2, you know, and because recent research, that's a tongue twister, has shown that psilocybin mushrooms are extremely effective in alleviating PTSD. And I would really, really look into that. And don't take my word for it. Just Google it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a big believer in psychedelics, that I think that in measured doses, you know, not like fucking every fucking day,
Right.
but like every month or 2 in a controlled kind of situation, they can be very effective. I did a whole webinar on psychedelics. You should look it up and listen to it. And I would definitely do that if I were suffering from PTSD. It's what I would do. So you do you, but just telling you, okay?
Sounds good. And thanks for your time. Be well.
Hey, no, thank you, Christopher. Thanks for being on. Hey, Hans, how's it going?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's up?
Okay. Well, I have actually 2 questions that belong together somehow.
Okay.
I'm right now 26 years old. I'm in Germany, and I'm a geologist, or becoming to be a geologist. And I want to go back to Argentina, where I spent some time for an internship.
Yeah.
And now my thing is, I'm not vaccinated, and
You are or are not?
I'm not.
Yep.
And the thing is that they don't let me enter, as a tourist at least, if I'm not vaccinated. So right now I'm thinking of taking the shot finally. I'm not really happy about this. And my idea is, let's just assume for a moment that this vaccine thing, it is really bad stuff and is intentionally bad stuff. So not like, okay, there's something wrong with it and okay, people are dying because of it as a side effect. Then I would assume that the Russians and the Chinese, they wouldn't play this game, because if they would see that the West would do this for whatever reason, it would be foolish for them to join the game, and they would just take a vaccine that is not that bad to protect their own people. And if the thing is settled, they come out much stronger than the West would be. You know what I mean?
Well, as I understand it, the Russian vaccine has an attenuated virus. It's not mRNA technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And as to the Sinovac, the Chinese vaccine, I'm not clear about its composition, to tell you the truth. But I know that the Russian vaccine is an attenuated virus, like a traditional virus.
Yeah. The thing is, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it works just the same way. So I'm thinking about taking this one and not Pfizer or BioNTech, because I'm really, really skeptical about this mRNA stuff. Whereas these vector stuff, I mean, it may not be the best thing that you could put into your body, but one has to see where you stay, basically.
Yes, that's one possibility. Another okay, if I were in your shoes, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I would do. Okay. If there are 2 possibilities. One is, of course, go to a friendly doctor in some immigrant community, because immigrant doctors are always the friendliest, and you know, throw him a couple of €100 to see if he can help you out. Okay. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but I think you get the picture.
Yeah.
That's one possibility. And the other possibility is I would wait it out. I would wait it out. And I know that they're going to impose like a mandatory vaccination in Germany. That's in the cards. Okay.
Yeah, that will come. Yeah.
And that makes me think that they're getting desperate. and that we're getting to the end stage of this.
Yeah, I'm thinking like this too, and I'm joining these demonstrations here every Monday, and it's getting really big. Alone in my federal state, we have like 4 million inhabitants, and we have protests going on every Monday for months now in over 150 cities. That's like 1989.
Yeah, and also what's really interesting is that the mainstream media is not reporting this at all.
Exactly, and even the West Germans were protesting now in large numbers, which is, us guys here in the East, kind of positively surprising.
Yeah, but what do you think of the fact that that the mainstream media is not reporting on these protests at all?
Well, it doesn't surprise me and most of my friends here, because we know how the game is played. And also the older generation that took part in the revolution of '89, they are also not surprised. But I think many people who join these demonstrations for the first time and they start to, so to speak, wake up, those guys, they think like, okay, that was a big thing. We have like 50,000 inhabitants and there were 1,000 people on the street, and the police encircled us, and that was a big thing. I would expect it to see it in the news. And if the media reports about it at all, then they say, oh, it was at least partially violent, which is true because the police was always the most aggressive party.
The police were violent.
Yeah, exactly. And they see that it's not reported, or it's reported in a completely wrong way. And this red pills people very efficiently, I would say. But on the other side, you see that, for example, our mayor of the town, he was at first kind of sympathetic towards us. And now he completely changed the sides and is completely against us, and there's some sort of mild propaganda against us, and which also looks very desperate to me. So I'm completely aligning with your thoughts. But I don't know if I would stay here longer. I mean, I could find a job in Sweden maybe, and work in Sweden and still live in Germany or move to Poland. That was actually an idea of mine. But I was thinking, okay, if the situation here in the West, especially economically, gets worse, then I want to go as soon as I can. That is when I got my studies ready in 2 or 3 months.
Well, I would recommend something else. If you want to go to Argentina, look about moving to Paraguay first. Because
Paraguay, a lot of Germans in Paraguay. That's a good idea.
Paraguay is a fairly backwards, shitholey country. Okay, and I'm Latin American, so I can speak with some authority. Okay, I'm not being racist. You know.
No, I know what you mean.
But Paraguay is like a shithole, and it's corrupt and all kinds of problems. And the thing is, see, I doubt if they have any kind of. First of all, if you're traveling on an EU passport, you can probably stay in Paraguay for like 3 months, no visa. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for that, though. I don't know. Check it.
No, that's the case. That's the case. Yeah.
What you got? So you could probably get there pretty easily. Number one. Number two, the border between Paraguay and Argentina. That's pretty easy cross. Okay. Because nobody hassles you. And the thing is also, see, you're 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, Argentina is corrupt. And they're sneaky, right?
Oh, yes.
But Paraguay is backwards, okay? But nice people. You know, Paraguay might be a better bet than Argentina, okay? I mean, that's my personal thing. What? Go ahead.
I know what you're thinking about, and maybe Paraguay would be good for me because it's full of Germans, both recent immigrants and people who are there for a few generations. So maybe I could keep myself above water, working on a farm and picking up some marta leaves or whatever. This would be,
and you'd be able to fit into the society in Paraguay pretty easily.
Yeah, you get connections. That's the thing. The other thing is, and this brings me to Argentina. At least I want to work in the mining industry and the mineral exploration business. So Paraguay is basically flat and they have nothing going on in this sector. Argentina has, and it's increasing. Sure. So my idea is, if I would work in Argentina, at least as a start, I would not earn that much money, but if they would pay me in a mining business, which is financed in Canada and in Europe, $2,000 per month. For German circumstances, that's a fucking joke. But in Argentina, that's a good amount of money, and you could live with it. You could gain some experience in your job. You would get to know people. And the thing that I like about Argentina is that it's a country constant mess. So people are used to shit.
Yes.
They know that the inflation is fucking high, and here in Germany
Uh-huh.
we are now crying out about officially 6% inflation, and the Argentines were like at a zero, and then you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so, for example, when I was working in Argentina, I had a quite good relationship with my boss, and then after I left, I called him and asked him how the situation is, because there was some random crisis going on, and he said, completely cool. Yeah, what are you talking about? We have always a crisis, so everything is just normal. He was completely relaxed, and I was like, oh, this poor guy down there, I better call him. And this impressed me because they are used to this constant mess they have. So if in Europe something would go wrong, let's say you have a blackout for 2 days, people would freak out. And having a blackout for 2 days of a very intelligent German energy policy is a question of time. In Argentina, people wouldn't like it, but the society wouldn't collapse.
Yeah,
and also
they shrug and move on. Yeah.
Exactly. And also the country, if you think a little bit more sinister, they can produce enough food to feed themselves. Germany certainly can't. Even if we could, the chaos would result in problems anyway. And they also got some oil, they got some minerals, so they could sustain a pretty decent amount of supplies on their own if they would like to. And also
the Germans are fucked. This winter, you guys are gonna have rolling blackouts, and you're gonna have heating cuts.
I got some extra gas here in my room.
and it's your own. I mean, not you, but I mean, it's the Germans' own fucking fault. They fucked it up. Why did they shut down all their nuclear power plants?
And you have to keep in mind, East Germany was the 3rd largest uranium producer in the world. We have shitloads of uranium. We could supply half of Europe with it. But
no, the fucking morons, the fucking Greens, who are fucking communists, right? Okay, well, anyway, he spilt milk, and this situation, the Russians are going to squeeze Germany's nuts off. It's all Mama Merkel's fault. That fucking cunt. But anyway, if I were you, I'd go to Paraguay and look and resist the vaccine. Okay, that's my thinking. Okay, you do you, but look, no shitty job is worth having a compromised immune system for the rest of your life, and a shortened lifespan at that. No shitty job. Nothing is worth that. Okay, and this shit is Nazi German, Nazi Dr. Mengele shit of mandating a vaccine like this. Fuck that. No.
Paraguay is a good idea. I will consider this.
Yeah. Okay. So you take it over, and I'll talk to you next week. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Take it easy. Hey, how's it going? Shiros?
Just call me Chris.
No, that's okay. But how do you pronounce your name?
You can call me Chris. Yeah, that's good. That's fine.
Okay. So what's on your mind, man?
Well, your topic was very topical for me today. I'll just give you a little background on myself. I'm in my late 40s. I work remote. I moved to a separate part of the country where my mother was located. She was by herself. I moved here from a major city to help her. She passed away about a year ago from complications from dementia. So moved away from my daughter, who I'm divorced, but I helped raise her. Yeah. So this whole question of community and people and being being near people and being a contributing part of the community, it's all I think about. I'm like, I'm in my late 40s. I'm not married. I didn't get remarried after I got divorced. I actually wanted to have fun because I got married young. And for about almost 8 years since I got divorced, I've dated a ton of women. I've had a ton of fun. Never got remarried. Broke up with some pretty eligible women that I probably could have gotten remarried at least 3 times. So this topic's right on point for me, Coach, because not only am I kind of figuring out where I'm going to go with my life, because my daughter's going to go to college. After that, I can pretty much do anything I want or go anywhere I want, working remote, being able to be flexible, not having any obligations. I've got some. I'm back here in this place to help my mom.
But she
and
passed
my
away.
What's that?
She passed away.
Yeah, she passed away. My best
So,
friends.
so hang on a second. So you don't have anything really holding you down where you are.
I don't. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
And you're feeling depressed about it.
I'm not depressed because I have a great apartment. You know, I have a huge 2,000 square foot apartment with an incredible view. And like, you know, I moved out of New York City, you know, and I lived in a small, you know, I lived in a 600 square foot apartment for almost 10 years. So I have a huge place. You can see all this like light and everything. It's about a quarter of the cost of what I was paying before. I'm saving a ton of money. I get to work from home. I have a big, huge desk I'm sitting at with giant screens. I haven't had this at home in a long time. So the lifestyle is good. I work at a ski resort on the weekends, and I actually manage the resort. And so I get a lot of interaction with people, and I have a lot. My best friends live here, you know, so I see them a lot. So your topic today in the thesis really hit me because I'm like, yeah, I mean, I do want community. You know, I would like to start another family eventually. I'm at that age where I could, and I love children. I love raising my daughter. So one thing that happened recently, though, when I moved back here, I went into a small business partnership with someone. I actually emailed you about it. I had a gut feeling that the partnership wouldn't go well right when we got
right. Yeah, I remember that email. Yeah.
Yeah. And then our partnership ended this week. And I spent about 300 hours of work on that project, which is about 50K of my time, you know, if I were to quantify it into hourly wages. And, you know, you told me, right, you predicted it. It wasn't going to end well. I didn't spend any money, thankfully, because I knew, like, I didn't want to invest my money into it. But the partner that I got out of, he was, you know, he was really pissed at me. And for whatever reason, he just didn't want to be in business with me. And he owns the bar right below my apartment. And he told me not to come in the bar anymore. So being a part of the community, I felt like I was a part of that community, you know, but so I'm dealing with this, you know, I'm in this place.
But see, remember, a community is not just the people that you hang out with. See, a community would be like your daughter. A community would be like your you know, future wife, not your ex-wife, of course. A community is the people who actually depend on you, and you depend on them. Now, just the people you hang out with, that's not a community. That's just people you hang out with. And our society encourages people to confuse the people you hang out with an actual community, which is a group of people that you depend on. Okay. I mean, that's the key thing, that you depend on them and they depend on you. Okay. A lot of guys find that sense of community in their work because they find that, you know, their clients need them, quote unquote, or their underlings need them, or their boss needs them, or somebody needs them at work, and they need the job for the money, obviously. And so they get that sense of reciprocal dependence from the job. But see, the people you hang out with, like the people at the bar, you know, and by the way, it's real convenient to have a bar right underneath your apartment, right? But that said, the people there, they're not your friends. I mean, they're not your community. They're just people you know. Okay. If you disappear, do any of them wonder where you are? Do any of them worry about you? Do they try to reach out to you and find you? Has that happened?
Yeah, no, I'm just the friends that I knew that made the introduction to this partner that was new to this town. And this is the town where I went to high school, and I have very deep roots here. So this other partner came to this town after I left. I left this town almost 25 years ago, and moved to New York City. So I built my whole life and career in New York City, and I was very successful there. And I love New York. I mean, think what you will of New York.
There. Yeah, I live there.
I love it there. I love it there. Yeah.
Well, you want to move back there?
Man, I was just there a couple weeks ago.
And you told me that it was like a shithole.
Well, there's a lot of fucked up stuff going on there, but I still feel like I'm at home there in Midtown Manhattan. You know, I've been there for almost 25 years, and I still love it there, despite the bullshit that's going on there and the open craziness that's happening. You know.
Well, okay. So anyway, what's the bottom line you wanted to ask about?
Well, how do I handle this situation downstairs with this upset partner? He's not upset about money. He's not upset about anything. I feel like he got upset with me because he wanted to put his stake in the ground to say like our partnership's over, because he couldn't log in to his email, and I didn't do anything on purpose. I just logged out of my email and there was just a miscommunication for a couple of hours in the morning, and he completely lost his shit and flipped out on me, which I'm glad he did, because now I know what he thinks. But at the same time, no one's upset about anything substantial. No money, no like,
Yeah,
you know, we
just
may have,
ignore it. Just chalk it up to experience, learn, and move on and forget about it. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, it's simple as that. Look, it's a trivial interaction at the end of it. I mean, you spend like 300 hours, right? And
Right.
in the end, nothing came of it, which
Right.
happens with most business deals, by the way. Most business projects don't amount to anything. You know, people try stuff and, you know, they try to make it work, and sometimes it doesn't end up in anything. So you had this partnership with these guys and this guy in particular, and it ended up in nothing. Just chalk it up as experience and move on, but focus on the things that you really want. And if you're talking to me and saying that this episode on theory of depression really struck you somehow, then there must have been something in it, and you must be feeling a little bit blue about something, and figure out what that
Well,
is and what the reason for it is.
it's being away from my daughter.
Then go where your daughter is.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have anything really tying you down, right?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's just a financial thing. I basically make 4 times the money here. I'm still making my New York City salary here. And
but you have 4 times the better life because of costs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
the cost of living.
then encourage your daughter to spend more time with you in your town, in your city, wherever it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
do it that way then, because and I understand, you know, moving to some city just for one person that's not dependent like your mother was, right? That's a little extreme. And so, you know, find if you have deep roots in the town that you're in, you have a lot of friends and a lot of people that you know there. Well, then, you know, take advantage of that, make them deeper, you know, foment them more, but don't be moving back to New York City just because of your daughter. And also, you yourself said that you've been to New York City again, and it's a shithole. And do you really want to go back to a city that is no longer the city that you love, but rather is a shithole that is going even worse? You see what I'm saying? So yeah. Anything?
These are all considerations. I mean, being with, you know, the topic of community equaling happiness and belonging, you know, this is kind of right at what I'm dealing with now. But I'll let somebody else jump on. Coach, your videos are great. Love it.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
I'll tune in next week. Thanks again.
Looking forward to it. Take it easy, man. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Coach?
Pretty good, Luca. Wait, who's this? Silvio?
Silvio.
Yeah, sorry.
It's been a while.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, and everything's all right. So I found myself in a depressed moment recently, but I overcame it. I found myself in that situation a few times, so I kind of knew what I had to do.
And what did you have to do?
Essentially, I just listened to that voice in the back of my head. That's
What did that
pretty
voice
much what I
say?
did. Huh?
What did that voice say?
So, all right.
Kill them quick.
No. So I was in a pretty good job. I mean, I got a few other things going on, but I noticed that it was taking up a lot of my time, right? And it was with somebody that I knew for a while that hired me. So I was managing COVID testing sites here in Jersey. No worries.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
Anyway, you were saying you're managing COVID testing sites in New Jersey, and
right. Yeah. And I found that found that it was taking up a lot of my time because I wanted to get into something else, right? And I would say just that that source of income alone is like about like half, I would say like 60% of my income. So it's a big deal, right? And like I mentioned, I have other things that I want to pursue. 24 years old, I realized that now's the time to take risk, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So whatever the outcome is, if it's good or it's bad, at least I did what I wanted to do, you know? And worst comes to worst, you know, I could still manage to, that's what I figured out. Like, I always find a way to kind of overcome things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, whatever the fucking thing is, basic needs, you know, like, just, so yeah, yesterday I ended up quitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Why?
not like, why?
Yeah.
Why did I end up quitting? Because like I said, it was just taking up too much of my time, and I feel like I could. The thing that I want to get into, it's just I feel like that what's the word?
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You were doing a COVID testing site. You were managing a COVID testing site.
Yeah.
And it represented 60% of your income.
Yeah.
And you quit yesterday, you said?
Yeah, I mean, I gave him like a week notice,
Yeah.
but I still told him I'll be in like the background, like for like if like meetings and stuff like that.
Do you have something else that something else that pays better, or some other specific goal that you want to pursue?
Yes.
What is that specific goal?
It's another venture that I want to get into.
Okay.
But if so, the other 40% of my income, I own a cleaning service, commercial and residential cleaning service. So
Yeah.
if worst comes to worst, I could just build that thing back up, you know. So how do I say this? It's just for the most part, I don't know. I feel like there's better things out there for me.
Okay.
So I'd like to pursue those things now that I have the chance, you know.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to really have a clear idea what you're pursuing before you jump out.
Oh, I do. I thought about this long and hard, and it's been on my mind for about a month now. And I've looked at all the angles, and that's why I made the decision to quit yesterday. Because
Okay.
I've always, ever since I was young, I always grabbed onto one monkey branch before letting go of the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And is this new venture, whatever it is it going to be providing the income that you're losing out from quitting this job?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. It's gonna take me a few months, but I have a good enough cushion to last that long.
Okay. So what's your question or comment?
My question to you is, I know it's probably just with experience, but like, how can you go about like just moving faster with things? Like for instance, when I told you that I wanted to quit, it took me a couple months, but I kind of already knew in the back of my head what I had to get done. But it still took me almost 3 months to move forward on that plan. So the question is, what can I do to speed up that process?
Well, first of all, in any kind of like serious, important decision, you should you should sit and think it over.
Right.
Okay. Whatever important decision. Okay. Especially when it involves your income, you don't want to be doing something that will hurt your income stream. Okay.
Right.
I mean, if it's just like a little hobby or something like that, it doesn't matter. But if it's like a big deal for you, you don't fuck with your with your rice bowl. I mean,
Right.
your own rice bowl, right? Let alone somebody else's. So you got to know what you're doing, and it's better to be very conservative in that. And you say you have a cleaning business. Well, I think that the smart thing would be perhaps to build that up a little bit, just to be on the safe side, just
Yeah.
so that you feel that you have something to turn to if things go tits up in this new venture.
Like sorry to interrupt. So as of right now, whatever my income is left takes care of my basic needs. Pretty much the lifestyle that I'm living right now. I mean, my rent, my car, food, entertainment. That 40% still takes care of all of that.
Okay, then you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like just I'm not clear what you're asking me.
I get it. Yeah.
I'm not clear
So,
what
all
your
right.
question is.
So yeah. So yeah. Back to that. Just that question, like just moving quicker on like you know what you got to do, but like you still take like you just kind of just like hurdle along. You know what I mean? You're wasting time. Maybe it's because of fear.
Well, no, I mean, like, look, what happens is a lot of times you have an idea and you think to yourself, oh, I'll jump into this. But a lot of times it's better to sort of like sleep on it for a while and let a few days or weeks pass
Right.
and thinking about it before pulling the trigger on a decision. Because if it's a big decision, you want to be really, really sure that it's the right decision. And sometimes, it could be just that you're at that particular moment, you're very eager to make a change, or you're impatient with other things in your life, or maybe you're just having a bad day.
Yeah.
And so, or a bad day, or just an out of sorts day. So you should never make a decision impulsively.
Right.
You should like think it over, and especially think it over in times that you're without stress, when you're relaxed, and just sort of like flip things over in your mind when you're not under pressure or feeling stressed out.
Yeah.
Okay? If it's an income decision,
yeah,
you always want to think it over at least 3-4 times, like really sit down and think it over, and often with a pad and a pencil or a pen to write down the pros and cons, because you'd be surprised how something as trivial as writing down a list of pros and cons can really help you clarify your thinking on whatever issue you've got.
Yeah.
So my thinking is that you should never make a decision, an important decision, casually or quickly. Okay. I mean, when you're reacting to events, yeah, sure, move quickly. But when you're deciding, oh, I'm going to change directions in my life, you want to think that sucker over a good long while before you pull the trigger. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more quick question. If it's not that quick, let me know. So how do you go about, so I would say I'm a pretty ambitious guy, right? How would you go about like, pretty much everybody in my circle, I've realized that they're pretty comfortable. They they're kind of fine with the way they're living right now, which is fine. I mean, it's okay. Like there's no problem with that. But like that kind of like that energy kind of transfers over to you, So like how would you go about like moving forward with that?
Well, what happens is a lot of times your friends can pull you down.
Yeah.
Okay. And see, if they're losers, you want to cut them out.
Right.
Okay? If they're just fucking bums, then cut them out. If there are people who are doing okay, they're just not that ambitious, then there's no reason to cut them out. You see, you want to cut out bums because they're going to actively discourage you from any project because they don't want you to succeed. It's the crabs in the bucket attitude, right?
Yeah.
But the guys who are doing okay, but they're just comfortable with where they are and they're just sort of like treading water, don't worry about them. Those guys aren't going to pull you down. Okay. Yeah. Unless it's that kind of personality, and you can spot those guys real quick.
Right.
Okay? So yeah, just so long as they're not pulling you down, there's no reason to cut out anybody. But a bum, you want to cut him out. You don't want a guy who's a bum in your life. You know? Because he's always going to try to pull you down or wind up fucking you over out of envy and resentment. And it happens all the time. You'd be surprised. A lot of guys, they grow up with some guy who's like a really good friend. They were really tight in high school or college or whatever. But then grown up, in mid-20s, they're a fucking bum and they pull you down. And you'd be surprised that they expend a lot of effort to pull you down. And sometimes it's real fucking subtle. So you gotta keep an eye out. Okay. Yeah. Friends who are bums, you want to get rid of them. Guys who are just like, they're just not particularly ambitious and they're happy with relatively a modest existence. But
yeah, that's more so the case.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. They just have less ambition than you do. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Yeah, true.
So don't think of it as a negative. Okay.
Got it.
And especially if they're good friends,
Which they
Okay.
are, yeah.
Yeah, then that'd be foolish for you to do that. Okay.
Right. All right. Cool.
You take it easy, man.
All right. See ya.
Let's see. Lucas, are you there?
Yes, I am, Coach. Gonzalo, how are you doing? Thanks for
Pretty
getting me
good.
on.
Pretty good. No problem. What's on your mind, man?
So first of all, I have a question about the topic of your webinar, which is how do you make people depend on you or need you, especially in a professional setting?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you want to provide them with something that nobody else can.
So you must probably find something that's unique about yourself then, or at least an organization.
Unique about what they need that nobody else can provide. Because see, a lot of times what happens is that somebody might need something and just nobody else has bothered to figure out what that is. Okay. If you can be the one to provide that, then you're golden. Okay. And sometimes it's not necessarily a particular service. You'll notice that sometimes it can be something more personal and abstract. Okay. Like, see, to give a simple and trivial example, suppose you have two. You're the manager of a shop, and you have two, cleaners. Two people who clean the floors. Janitors, right? And one is just this very quiet guy, and the other is always cracking jokes, and they both do the job more or less well. But the guy who's cracking jokes, he always creates a sunny atmosphere because he's cracking jokes. He's an easygoing guy, and everybody winds up being in a better mood. Well, that guy is going to be more valuable because he's providing something subtle. He's just he's an agreeable personality. I'm just giving one example, of something of a quality that is not work related. Because being, good at cracking jokes and having a sunny disposition doesn't make somebody a better or worse janitor. It doesn't influence their janitorial skills, as it were, right? But that can add something subtle but important. Okay. Now, suppose you have I don't know. I mean, it would depend on the job and the specifics of what you're doing. But what you want to do is you want to be like a drug dealer, okay, and create a dependence on you, okay, because that's what drug dealers do. Of course, they create a dependence, and the junkies, they need their drug dealer, and they'll do anything to keep the drug dealer happy, okay. If you become your business's drug dealer, whatsoever that drug may be, they will do whatever it takes to keep you happy. But they have to know that you're providing something unique, okay? Because if they don't know that you're the one providing something that's unique, that is of unique value to them, then they're never going to appreciate you. Now, will they? See? And so that's why a lot of times self-promotion is very important, the art of self-promotion. And some guys are very, very good at self-promotion, and some very valuable people are horrible at self-promotion, and therefore people don't realize how valuable they actually are. You see what I'm saying? So, go ahead.
That is some really helpful advice. Thanks a lot for that. Especially, I like your analogy with the drug dealer. Maybe to give some context to my situation,
sure.
It's that I previously worked in like strategy consulting and venture building, and now I started from last week working in sales for a tech scale up. And I obviously it's extremely competitive. I mean, the other people working there, and long term, I'm looking into starting my own business. And the idea about starting my own business would be that it's scalable, it's intangible, and it gives me recurring revenue, and it should be able to be hosted from anywhere in the world. So that's sort of my vision that I'm looking forward to. And I mean, an opportunity that this company at the moment gives me is that I can work from anywhere, and I actually quit my rental contracts and all of that. So starting from next month, I'll be able to move wherever I want.
And obviously, where are you now, and where do you want to move to? Just the country.
Sure. I'm in Hamburg, Germany right now, and I want to move to. Well, first of my thought was to go to Spain just for like 1, 2, or 3 months. Because I love that country. I want to practice my Spanish skills. Also, I do want to practice my French skills. but I don't really want to move to France, to be honest. And also, I want to long term, like towards the end of the year, is what I was thinking, is I want to practice my Chinese skills. And for that, I obviously go to China because it's impossible right now with the regulation.
Sure.
But an alternative would be Singapore or maybe Malaysia, specifically maybe Kuala Lumpur or Penang.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the big idea is just I have to stay in the European time zone at first, just so I can go back and like reconnect with
Sure.
my colleagues in the office, so I can
Mhm.
go back to Germany in like 3 months or so.
Mhm.
And long term, I want to go to Southeast Asia, because with the time zone, it's just much better than going to Latin America or
Mhm.
anywhere towards that direction. And I'm just thinking that I read this book, which is called Digital Nomads, and it talks
Yeah.
about how a new community of digital nomads has some like push factors that are pushing you away from your hometown and pulling you towards some other country or some other place. And I could really identify with that, because I mean that the book talks about Bali, Indonesia, especially, but I could go anywhere. I mean, I'm open towards anything. So I'm thinking, what would be your advice, maybe?
Well, I'm living my advice. I'd move to Eastern Europe. I think that Eastern Europe, Russia and Ukraine and Belarus, they're the future over the next 50 years, 60 years, definitely. The West is collapsing. I mean, we're watching it happen, man. And this winter, you're in Germany. You know how things are going to go. They're going to go like shit. And there's going to be a war between the Sino-Russo alliance and the Americans. And the Americans are going to lose, and they're going to lose huge. And the Europeans, the Germans, they can't afford to have a war with Russia, because if they do, the German people are going to be freezing. If not this winter, then the next winter, the winter of 2023. And so the Germans are going to have to sit out this war, and they'd be really stupid to go on the side of the Americans, because the Europeans and the Americans together will lose to the Russians and the Chinese. The Russians and the Chinese are stronger. That's a reality. And the Americans have war gamed this already. They know that they're going to lose, and yet they're fucking morons. They're stumbling towards this like fucking idiots that they are, And it's going to get fucking ugly. That's all I have to say. But anyway, the point. You're in Germany and you want to go to someplace. You have the whole world as your oyster. But are you vaccinated, by the way?
I'm officially vaccinated, yes.
That's KG's statement. What does officially vaccinated mean?
I am vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So yeah, I think that answers all questions.
Okay. My thinking is, well, you can go anywhere you want to, right? The Germans are going a little bit nuts right now with vaccine mandates and all kinds of bullshit. It's okay. I would go to a country that's easygoing. I'd go to a poor country, because a poor country is going to be cheap, and your salary, the money you're making will go a lot further, and you want to go to some place that has a future. And you got to be looking at the demographics of wherever you're going to. Like here in Kharkiv, the demographics are all in its favor. People are coming here, okay? Because there's tech industry, there's universities here, there's industrial stuff. The Russians, if and when they attack Ukraine, this is going to be the first city that they take, and they're going to make sure that nothing happens to it, because for them, Kharkiv is a valuable city, and the Ukrainian army, as a practical military matter, cannot defend the city. They can't, because the geography of it is such that they're just not going to be able to. Okay, and so this is probably the future. Insofar as Eastern Europe is concerned. Insofar as Asia, well, you would know better than I do, because I really don't know much about what's in store for Asia insofar as Malaysia or Indonesia or any of these countries, right? But I do know that the problems that China is having now, the financial problems, yeah, they'll have their financial crisis and it'll be a big disaster. And a lot of people will go bankrupt and a lot of people will jump out of windows in high stories, shit like that, as usual. But the country isn't going away, okay? The country is not going to disappear or something, okay? And so it's always going to be China. And China is riding the wave of history. Okay, the waves of history were very much against China for 150 odd years, but now things are turning around and they're in China's favor. And like it or not, the Han Chinese are the future. And so if you want to be positioned out there, that would be a smart idea. I don't know how this war is going to play out in China. And my great concern, which I've mentioned before, is that this war, the Americans, when they realize that they're losing, that they panic and decide to use nuclear weapons. That's my great concern. And I think it's a realistic concern, especially considering how stupid the current American political leadership is. And so anyway, going back to your situation of where to go, what to do. I can't tell you where to go. You got to figure that out on your own. The idea of being a digital nomad, that all sounds good and fine, but you have to have a reason for it. Okay. I mean, what do you want? Okay. To be a digital nomad for the sake of being a digital nomad, you want to make a lot of money. Ultimately, what I have noticed is that the only thing that really matters are the human connections that you make. And you want to be making more profound human connections and creating relationships of dependence, of mutual dependence, not one-sided dependence, because one-sided dependencies are always bad. They always end badly. You want to have mutual dependence. And you want to have common goals with the people that you have relationships with. Say, be it a business with a partner, be it a family with a woman. I mean, what you want is to have a common objective with the partners that you find along the way. Okay? Because when you have a common objective, that's when a relationship between two people becomes reciprocal, truly reciprocal. Because you need each other, because each of you has certain qualities that you bring to the table, and each of you has certain deficiencies that the other can cover for, okay? And that's how you should be approaching it. And your goal should be, it seems to me, and not just to you, but to everybody, is to be making strong human relationships that last, where you can grow and develop together and provide each other with protection and sustenance, especially because the next few years are going to be really, really fucking hard. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that your analysis of the whole geopolitical situation and all of that is very, let's say, reasonable. The way I try to make my decisions is basically that I want to optimize my life along 3 dimensions. First of all, is lifestyle, which is the most important one for me. I like warm climate and nature and connecting to nature and all of that. Second one would be my finances. So obviously that is tax, that is cost of living, and that is any way I can produce income, which would be from in Germany and earning euros and spending them in whatever currency. And the other thing would be liberties, especially like these soft liberties that people leave you alone. Like you can live a free, liberal lifestyle. That's what's important. Not that Germany says we have the freedom of speech, which we don't have, but that's where I make the separation of liberties, let's say. So what I didn't realize before reading this book, Digital Nomads, is that digital nomads are a community, and the most important value for them
they're not a community. They're not a community. No, they're not, because they don't have mutual dependence. See, a community is a community when it has mutual dependence. If they do not depend on each other for survival, then they're just people that know each other. They're just a group of friends.
Basically. I believe that many of them are entrepreneurs and basically starting businesses together and taking care of each other when they come to a new country which they don't know, like kind of like expats. So
but that's a friendly assistance, but it's not mutual dependence. Mutual dependence is exactly that, where you depend on the other person. Okay, and that's a real community. Look, I'm opposed to this liberal use of the word community, because it confuses relationships that are very superficial and casual with relationships that are very profound and meaningful. And that's why I object to it, because one person or the other starts to think that the relationship is much more profound than it actually is. And so when you say about the digital nomad community, no, it's not a digital nomad community. Does the digital nomad community have its own flag? Do they all have a military service? Do they all like look after each other when one of them gets sick or something like that? No, it's just people who have like shared interests and shared outlook on life, but they don't depend on one another. Therefore, they're not a community. And it's important. Why? Because see, you want to be finding an actual community, because this whole notion of digital nomad, it's very attractive, especially when you're in your 20s. But as you get older, you discover that what you really value are not lifestyles or even freedoms, but human connections. They make you feel attached. They're very important to you. And let me give you a specific example of something that's going to sound really absurd. I've mentioned this story several times before, but I don't mind repeating it. And I hope that you have heard it, won't mind. I used to have a dog called Claire. She was a mutt. She was a German Shepherd mixed with probably Greyhound, right? And I would walk the dog, around near my apartment in Chile, 3, 4, 5 times a day, depending on how often she needed to go to the bathroom, and then depending on if I wanted to stretch my legs or not. Anyway, this happened more than on one occasion, that we'd be walking along, and the street, the cars passing by, one of them might backfire, or some event would happen that would surprise both the dog and myself, some noise or whatever. And we'd both be shocked and look in the direction of the event, and invariably, and this happened multiple times, the dog would look at me and I would look at the dog. And what was going on was that, see, I thought about the incident many times, and I finally came to the conclusion that what was going on was that the dog was looking at me to confirm that what she had experienced, what she had heard, the loud banging noise or whatever that had gotten her attention, it was something that I also had experienced, that I was confirming her reality I mean, we were mutually confirming our reality just by that glance. And it was so weird because she was a dog, with, I don't know how many IQ points a dog has, 40 IQ points, I guess. And I was a human being, and yet we were exchanging that look that confirmed the reality we had both experienced. And see, that kind of connection, yes, it was with a fucking dog, but you have that connection with human beings. I mean, like, look here, you're talking to me, and a lot of the other people have been talking to me about different things that are happening to them in their cities. And we're all subtly confirming the insanity that we're perceiving, right? We're all saying, Jesus Christ, man, this shit is going on, right? Perhaps we don't say it in those words, but the effect is the same. What happens as you get older, you start to feel it more necessary to connect with people so that they can confirm the reality that you are experiencing. It's not that you are insecure as to your perceptions. It's not that you're wondering, oh, am I losing my mind? No, you just need an independent confirmation, but not just an independent confirmation like a fucking fact checker on some website or some shit like that, but like an actual human being who is experiencing the same as you. And you're looking at them and saying, yeah, I'm experiencing it too. I know what you're talking about. That kind of connection is so important because it's a way to maintain your sanity. Crazy as it may sound, the dog reacting to the noise and then looking at me, we were confirming each other's sanity. We were confirming each other's correct appreciation of the reality going on around us. It was a trivial noise of some car or some truck, a backfire of an engine. I mean, something inconsequential in the scheme of things. But it was just a way to confirm. And that confirmation is so important, okay? And so that's why you want to be developing relationships, real relationships, not just friendly, casual relationships that don't mean a thing. No, you want to actually have dependent relationships, especially with people that you respect. That should be your goal. And the lifestyle and freedoms and all that other good shit, that's not really that important. You think it is now because you're young, but I'm twice your age. I can tell you, because when I was your age, I thought the same as you. I mean, yeah, when I was, Late 20s, I thought that the most important thing was how cool my apartment was, the cool shit that I had, my cool truck, all that good shit. I had a Land Rover. That was important to me. And as I get older, I realize retrospectively that what I should have been developing was deeper human relationships that would have helped me navigate what I was experiencing at the time. Because I realize now that when I was your age, roughly my late 20s, I was too isolated. And I realized too that our society sort of like encourages this in a subtle way, to be sort of like disconnected. And that way they can sell you more shit, because that's what's really going on. They encourage you to be childlike and be a kidult in order to sell you more shit, to be without people who depend on you, who can give you guidance, who can sort of like confirm the reality around you. Okay. And so my suggestion is, wherever you go, be thinking to yourself, who are the people that I can connect to and form profound and long-lasting relationships of mutual dependence. Don't be focused so exclusively on lifestyle and freedoms. I mean, it's understandable that you want to focus on money. You want to be making good money or live in a place where your money will get you far insofar as, living standards are concerned. That's perfectly reasonable, but don't neglect the human component, and be willing to sacrifice lifestyle or freedoms for human relationships. In the long run, they are more important. Believe me. Yeah.
Gonzalo, thank you very much. That was very helpful and it gives me a lot to think about. So thank you for all of that. I just want to leave with one question, which is totally different. Do
Sure.
you occasionally look up the news source Al Jazeera? Because yesterday I heard about it and the history about it, and I think it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, it's a Qatari TV station, funded by the Middle Easterners. And of course, whenever they talk about Middle Eastern politics, I'm like, I'm not so sure. But they report very well on a lot of shit going on in Europe and the United States,
Exactly.
So yeah, it's sort of like RT. Whenever they talk about shit going on in Russia, I'm like, I'm not so sure. But whenever they talk about shit that's going on elsewhere, I believe them, And so yeah, I miss Press TV, which was Iran's outfit. They got banned, but Press TV was also like another outside perspective. So I'm always in favor of outside and dissident perspectives. Yeah, I always take them very seriously. Yeah.
Well, same for me with CGTN and Xinhua News and the People's Daily, because I think that China gets completely misrepresented. But anyways, thanks a lot, Gonzalo. I wish you a nice evening, and thank you for everything.
No, my pleasure. Take it easy, man. Okay, boys and girls, I'm going to call it a stream because I've been going on for a little over 3 hours and I'm a little bit punch drunk, to tell you the truth. And so Felipe, Ali, Senor Frog, Michael, and yeah, guys, I'll have to catch you next time. I'm sorry about this, but I'm really kind of out of gas, to tell you the truth. And I'm not looking forward to my tooth thing that I have to go and fix tomorrow morning. And it totally fucks up my plans because I was planning on traveling tomorrow for the week, but okay, that's not going to happen. Anyway, video for this Wednesday is edited and uploaded, and it'll be on, and I have forgotten the title of it, but it'll be on Wednesday at 4 p.m. my time, which is, I think it's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, the thing is, I want to how can I put this? Okay, I've been working on some nonfiction stuff, and I've been developing some ideas here on the Patreon webinar. And so you guys who are listening to me, you guys are my webinar subscribers. You're like my diehard fans. And what I want to do is I want to have I told you guys that, finding an objective is you either have it or you don't. Now, the problem I'm having is that at this time in my life, I have multiple objectives going on. And as I've mentioned before, I don't have that much time left ahead of me. right? And so I'm trying to figure out a way, what would be the smartest thing to do over the next year or so that I have left. And so I'm trying to figure that out because I want this time to be worthwhile. Mhm. And so I'm debating on different approaches, and I'm realizing that by debating different approaches, I'm paralyzing myself. I'm not doing anything because I'm kind of like, should I do this? Should I do that? It's kind of like I'm dithering, you know, and that's the worst thing of like having multiple paths but not choosing, and therefore you wind up going down no path, you know, and time just ticking away. And so I've realized that that's been happening to me over the last few months. And what's happened to me, I realized that my decision to nuke my channels and all that was partly in response to this, that I can't seem to make up my mind. And so what I think I'm going to be doing, and I don't know if you guys are up for it, I think probably at some point over the next week or so, I'll do like a special webinar. And I'd really appreciate your input because I'm going to lay out the different things I've been thinking about, and I'd really appreciate your input as to what you think of each of these possibilities, because I'm trying to work through where to go in the limited time that I have left. You know what I mean? So anyway, I will catch you well, definitely next Sunday, and I will try to have something some special webinar kind of thing that'll be it's not going to be like an extra webinar. It'll just be sort of like a down low webinar that I'll just run the webinar and probably not record it or anything. Okay, I don't know about that, but it's just sort of like I'd appreciate your input about different things that I'm thinking I could do, but that I haven't made up my mind. Okay. Okay. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Take it easy.